Hey there, wanderers of the night and seekers of stories. If you're tuning in for tales that soothe the soul, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment below. Let me know what distant horizons you're dreaming of tonight. Now, let's ease into the sands of time, where the whispers of ancient winds carry us back to 3rd century CE Arabia, to the heart of beyond the legends of a Bedouin trader. Imagine, if you will, the vast expanse of the Arabian desert at dusk, where the sun dips like a golden coin into a sea of dunes, casting long, soft shadows that cradle the earth in quiet repose. Here, in this timeless realm, the Nabatean trade routes stretch like silken threads across the sands, connecting distant oases and forgotten outposts. These paths, etched by centuries of patient footsteps, were the lifelines of a world where survival wove itself into the fabric of daily existence. Drawing from the accounts of Strabo in his geography, we glimpse a people whose ingenuity turned arid wastelands into thriving corridors of commerce. Their caravans, moving with the graceful rhythm of the desert itself. Picture a typical trader, a figure cloaked in simple wool robes that flutter gently against the cooling breeze, their fabric worn soft from years of travel. These nomads, neither kings nor warriors, embodied a quiet resilience, guiding their camel caravans through the whispering sands with a steady hand and an unyielding spirit. The camels, those stoic companions, plod along with rhythmic grunts that echo like distant thunder, their broad feet sinking softly into the warm grains beneath. Each step stirs a faint haze of dust, carrying the scent of sun-baked earth and faint spices, cinnamon and myrrh lingering in the air, remnants of the goods they bore from far-off lands. In the soft glow of twilight, as stars begin to puncture the velvet sky, these traders would pause at hidden wells, where the cool water laps against stone troughs, offering a momentary respite. Strabo speaks of such places, describing how the Nabateans mastered the art of water conservation, channeling hidden springs through ingeniously carved channels to sustain their journeys. The air grows crisp then, carrying the subtle aroma of brewing tea from leather pouches, its steam rising like faint spirits in the dim light. These moments of calm were sacred, a pause in the endless flow of trade that bound east to west, from the incense-laden ports of the Arabian Peninsula to the markets of Petra itself. Life for these Bedouin traders was a dance with the elements, a harmonious blend of adaptation and endurance. They navigated by the stars, those eternal guides twinkling like old friends overhead, their wool robes providing a barrier against the gentle chill that settled with the night. The sandy winds, ever so light and caressing, would brush against their faces, carrying whispers of distant storms that never quite reached them, leaving only a fine layer of grit that sparkled under the moonlight. Each trader carried not just goods, precious frankincense, bolts of dyed fabrics, and rare gems, but stories woven into the very fibers of their being, tales of routes that shifted like the dunes, always changing, yet eternally present. Resilience was their quiet anthem, a subtle force that propelled them forward through days of unrelenting sun and nights of profound stillness. From Petra's ancient inscriptions, we learn of their meticulous record-keeping, etched into rock faces with tools of flint and determination. These carvings, simple yet profound, detail the routes and the goods exchanged, but they rarely name the traders themselves. Here lies a mystery that lingers like the faint echo of a camel's bell. In the distance, the unrecorded names of these shadowy figures. Who were they, these unsung architects of commerce? Strabo alludes to their elusive nature, noting how they moved like phantoms across the landscape, their identities dissolving into the sands, preserved only in the goods they traded and the paths they tread. It is an enigma that adds a layer of intrigue to their story, a reminder that not all legacies are carved in stone. Some are written in the wind. As the caravans pressed on, the traders would share tales around flickering campfires, their voices low and melodic, like the rustle of palm fronds in a hidden grove. The fire's warm glow illuminated their weathered faces, casting soft shadows that danced across the sand, while the air filled with the soothing crackle of burning wood and the earthy scent of sage. They spoke of the resilience required to cross vast deserts, where the horizon blended seamlessly into the sky, a seamless tapestry of gold and indigo. Each journey reinforced their bond with the land, teaching them to read the subtle signs, the way the wind shifted directions before dawn, or how the camel's ears twitched at the approach of an unseen oasis. In this world, trade was more than mere exchange. It was a ritual of connection, a thread that linked communities across unforgiving terrains. The traders carried not only commodities, but the essence of cultures, blending flavors and fabrics in a gentle fusion that fostered peace through mutual dependence. Sensory details abound in these exchanges. The cool touch of silk unwound from bundles, the sharp tang of salt crystals harvested from distant shores, and the rhythmic sway of the caravans that lulled both man and beast into a trance-like state. Strabo's observations highlight how these routes facilitated the flow of goods from Arabia to the Mediterranean. Yet, it was the traders' innate adaptability that truly sustained it all. They lived lightly, carrying only what was necessary, their wool robes a testament to their frugal wisdom, designed to withstand the subtlest shifts in temperature as day turned to night. One might envision a trader at the height of his journey, pausing atop a high dune to survey the path ahead. The sand beneath his feet feels alive, shifting ever so slightly with each breath, while the distant call of a night bird adds a melodic undercurrent to the silence. The mystery of their unnamed lives deepens here, for in the Petra inscriptions we find ledgers of transactions, but seldom personal names, perhaps a deliberate choice, a way to blend into the eternal cycle of the desert, where individual stories merge into the collective memory of the sands. This anonymity lends an air of subtle wit to their legacy. They were the unseen hands that shaped empires, yet chose to remain as ephemeral as the wind. As mornings broke, the traders would rise with the first light, the sky painted in hues of soft pink and lavender, the air fresh with the promise of another day. The camels would stretch their long necks, emitting soft, contented grunts that reverberated through the camp, a sound as familiar as a heartbeat. They moved onward, guided by an internal compass honed through generations, their wool robes billowing like flags of endurance. Strabo notes the Nabateans' expertise in these arts, their ability to thrive where others faltered, turning potential peril into pathways of prosperity. Yet, amid this serene rhythm, there was always the underlying strength of human spirit, a resilience that whispered through every step. The traders' lives were a masterclass in harmony with nature, where the sandy winds carried not threats, but tales of survival. The faint scent of wild herbs crushed underfoot, the gentle warmth of the sun on one's back, these were the companions that made the journey not just bearable, but beautiful. And so, as we draw near the end of this gentle introduction, let us linger a moment longer on these sands, where the mysteries of unrecorded names invite us to ponder the unseen heroes of history. From the Nabatean trade routes, we transition now to the broader tapestry of their world, where other stories await in the quiet folds of time. In the heart of ancient Palmyra, where the desert winds whispered secrets through arched colonnades, the palaces stood as timeless sanctuaries of stone and silk. Sunlight filtered softly through latticed windows, casting a golden haze over polished marble floors that echoed with the faintest steps. Here, amid the swirl of incense from smoldering braziers, frankincense and myrrh mingling in the air like distant memories, lived a woman whose presence commanded the rhythms of an empire. Queen Zenobia, draped in robes of shimmering silk that caught the light like ripples on a hidden oasis, moved with the grace of one who shaped destinies. Her world was one of councils and commerce, where the scent of spices from distant lands filled the halls, and the murmur of advisors created a soothing symphony, like the gentle rustle of palm fronds in the evening breeze. Born around the year 240 in the fertile edges of what was then Roman Syria, Zenobia, known to some as Septimia Zenobia, emerged from a lineage woven with the threads of Arab and Aramaic heritage. Her early years, though shrouded in the quiet mists of history, as described in Zosimus Historia Nova, were marked by an education as refined as the pearls that adorned her neck. She learned the languages of power: Greek, Latin, and Aramaic, her mind a repository of philosophy and poetry, much like the vast libraries of Palmyra that held scrolls fragrant with age. In those palace chambers, where cool shadows danced on walls etched with ancient carvings, Zenobia cultivated a wisdom that would later guide her realm. The air was always laced with the subtle sweetness of jasmine, a reminder of the oases beyond the city. And she often sat by fountains whose water trickled in hypnotic patterns, contemplating the flow of trade that sustained her people. As the wife of King Odenathus, Zenobia's role evolved from consort to sovereign, especially after his passing in the 260. An event Zosimus recounts with the detachment of a distant observer. She assumed the mantle of leadership not through conquest, but through the artful navigation of alliances and commerce. Her silk robes whispering against the marble as she presided over councils. Imagine her in the grand hall, the room bathed in the warm glow of oil lamps that flickered like fireflies, their scent of olive oil blending with the earth's own breath. Advisors gathered around her, their voices a low, rhythmic hum, discussing the caravans that traversed the Silk Road. Zenobia, with eyes as sharp as the desert stars, directed the flow of good silks from China, spices from India, and ivory from Africa, ensuring Palmyra's markets thrived. Her leadership was a balm to the empire, fostering prosperity that echoed through the corridors like the soft toll of distant bells. In those serene assemblies, she embodied a wit as subtle as the play of light on her jeweled crown. Zosimus notes her as a ruler who could disarm with a clever turn of phrase, turning negotiations into symphonies of agreement. Why fight the sands when we can ride them? She might have quipped, her words carrying a hint of irony that eased tensions without stirring conflict. The palaces, with their high ceilings that captured echoes of laughter and discourse, became centers of intellectual exchange, where philosophers and merchants alike found solace in her presence. Sensory details abounded. The cool touch of marble underfoot, the faint taste of dates, and honey offered to guests. The visual tapestry of colorful tapestries depicting mythical oases. Zenobia's silk robes, dyed in hues of deep indigo and crimson, flowed around her as she leaned forward, her fingers tracing maps on tables inlaid with mother of pearl, plotting routes that brought wealth without the clamor of war. Her reign, spanning the turbulent 260 and into the 270, was a testament to administrative finesse, as Zosimus illustrates in his measured prose. She expanded Palmyra's influence through diplomacy, forging ties that secured the city's role as a crossroads of cultures. In the private gardens of the palace, where night-blooming flowers released their perfume under a canopy of stars, Zenobia would reflect on the empire's growth. The sound of water from ornate fountains provided a constant, lullaby-like backdrop, mirroring the steady pulse of her decisions. She encouraged the arts and sciences, inviting scholars whose debates filled the air with the rustle of parchment and the clink of goblets filled with spiced wine. One might picture her in the quiet hours before dawn, walking the corridors alone, the silk of her garments brushing against the stone like a gentle sigh, contemplating how trade agreements sealed with the press of a signet ring, wove the fabric of peace. Yet, even in this oasis of calm, challenges whispered through the incense-laden air. Zosimus describes how Roman emperors, viewing Palmyra's rise with a wary eye, sought to reassert control, leading to strains that tested Zenobia's resolve. She responded not with arms, but with the quiet strength of policy, ensuring her city's autonomy through shrewd economic maneuvers. In the council chambers, the atmosphere grew thick with the aroma of myrrh. As she negotiated tributes and alliances that kept the caravans flowing, her leadership fostered a sense of unity, where the diverse peoples of her realm, Arabs, Greeks, and Romans, coalesced under her banner. Much like the mosaic tiles on the palace floors that formed intricate patterns from disparate pieces. As the years unfolded, Zenobia's influence extended beyond Palmyra's walls, her name becoming synonymous with enlightened rule. Zosimus recounts how she patronized grand building projects, such as the enhancement of temples and markets, where the scent of fresh stone and mortar mingled with the everyday bustle. In these endeavors, she displayed a wit that disarmed critics, often remarking on the folly of haste with a smile that softened the marble-hard realities of governance. The palaces, with their vast courtyards where breezes carried the taste of salt from distant seas, served as the stage for her vision of a prosperous federation. Sensory richness defined these moments. The warmth of sunlight on her skin as she oversaw constructions, the auditory tapestry of hammers and voices blending into a harmonious whole, the visual splendor of arches rising like ancient guardians. Through it all, Zenobia remained a figure of poise, her silk robes a symbol of the luxury she cultivated. Zosimus portrays her as a leader who balanced the scales of power with the precision of a jeweler, ensuring that trade routes remained open and her people prospered. In the evenings, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of lavender and gold, she might have retired to her chambers, where the flicker of candles cast dancing shadows and the air grew heavy with the scent of sandalwood. There, in solitude, she pondered the mysteries of her world, her thoughts as layered as the fabrics she wore. Yet, as with all tales woven in the sands of time, Zenobia's story draws toward a veil of uncertainty. Zosimus, in his Historia Nova, notes her eventual encounter with Roman forces in the 270, a consequence of shifting alliances rather than direct strife. Captured and brought to Rome, her fate becomes a whisper lost in the winds. Did she live out her days in exile, perhaps in a villa where the murmur of the Tiber replaced the echoes of Palmyra's marble? Or did she fade into obscurity, her spirit merging with the eternal desert? The mystery lingers, a soothing enigma that invites reflection, much like the soft patter of rain on stone after a long drought. Some say she adapted to her new life with the same grace that defined her rule, while others whisper of a quiet end, far from the palaces she once commanded, as the stars above Palmyra continue their silent vigil. The story of Queen Zenobia transitions gently into the annals of history, a lullaby of leadership and legacy that paves the way for tales yet to unfold. Perhaps in the next breath of wind, we might glimpse the threads of another story waiting in the shadows. Word count 1,500 in the hushed expanse of the Arabian desert, where the sun dipped low and painted the sandstone cliffs in shades of amber and rose. The ancient city of Petra slumbered under a veil of twilight. It was the 4th century CE, and the once vibrant heart of trade routes now echoed with a quietude that felt almost eternal. The rock-cut markets, carved meticulously into the rosy cliffs, stood as silent witnesses to a fading era. Here, in this cradle of civilizations, the mysteries of decline unfolded like whispers carried on the gentle desert winds. As the last traders draped in heavy woolen cloaks gathered their goods, the air grew thick with the scent of dry earth and fading spices. These merchants, their faces etched with lines of weary resolve, moved through the narrow six with a rhythm as old as the stones themselves. The facades of the treasury and the street of facades, once alive with the bustle of commerce, now crumbled at the edges, their intricate Nabatean carvings softened by time and sandstorms. A soft breeze stirred the dust, carrying with it the faint, earthy aroma of sagebrush and the distant hint of frankincense. Remnants of caravans long departed. The traders paused at the market entrances, their cloaks billowing like forgotten flags, as if reluctant to leave the shadows that had sheltered generations. In those quiet moments, the city seemed to breathe a sigh, its pink-hued stones glowing warmly in the fading light. One could almost hear the subtle creak of ancient doors swinging shut, the sound muffled by layers of accumulated sand. The desert winds, cool and unhurried, whispered through the narrow passages, brushing against the skin like a gentle caress, carrying away the echoes of bartered deals and lively negotiations. It was a scene of serene abandonment, where the harsh sun's retreat brought a deceptive peace, as if Petra were merely resting, not fading. Yet beneath this calm facade lay the subtle shifts that had unraveled the city's prosperity. Trade routes, once the lifeblood of Petra, had begun to wane, drawn away by the pull of newer paths across the seas and through distant lands. The Roman Empire, which had once relied on Nabatean intermediaries for spices, silks, and precious stones, turned its gaze toward maritime ventures along the Red Sea and beyond. Archaeological reports from sites like the Great Temple and the High Place of Sacrifice reveal layers of sediment and fewer artifacts from this era, suggesting a gradual withdrawal rather than a sudden collapse. The traders, sensing the change, packed their camels with the last of their wares, jars of myrrh and bundles of dyed fabrics, and set off into the dusk, their footsteps soft on the sandy paths. As they departed, the markets emptied like a breath, exhaled into the vastness. The rock-cut stalls, hewn from the living stone with masterful precision, now stood bare, their shelves dusted with fine grains that glittered in the moonlight. One might imagine the cool touch of the stone walls, smoothed by centuries of hands and weather, offering a silent farewell to those who had called this place home. The air, still and serene, carried the faint, lingering scent of olive oil from lamps long extinguished, mingling with the dry, mineral tang of the cliffs. This was no dramatic exodus, but a quiet drift, as if the city itself conspired with the winds to ease the transition. Historians and archaeologists, piecing together fragments from excavations at places like the Petra Church and the royal tombs, point to a tapestry of factors in this decline. The trade winds had shifted, quite literally, as safer sea routes via Alexandria and the Persian Gulf siphoned off the flow of goods that once funneled through Petra's gates. Reports from the American Center of Research highlight how the city's strategic location, once its greatest asset, became a liability in an era of expanding naval power. The Nabateans, masters of their arid domain, found themselves bypassed, their once thriving economy ebbing like the tide. Subtle wit lingers in this irony. The very rocks that protected Petra from invaders now enclosed a ghost of its former self, a fortress turned cradle for secrets. Amid this retreat, unknowns lingered like shadows in the deepening night. What precisely triggered the abandonment? Excavations uncover enigmatic evidence, scattered coins from the late 3rd century, abruptly ceasing, and pottery shards suggesting interrupted feasts. But no clear answers emerge. Some scholars speculate that earthquakes, those unbidden tremors of the earth, may have played a role, toppling structures and disrupting water systems that sustained the city. Yet the reports from the Department of Antiquities in Jordan offer only hints. Fractures in the aqueducts and collapsed facades, their edges worn smooth by winds that whispered through the cracks. It was a decline wrapped in mystery, a puzzle where each piece, when turned, revealed more questions than resolutions. In the soft glow of starlight, the desert winds continued their gentle dance, carrying grains of sand to settle in the crevices of forgotten arches. The traders, now mere silhouettes on the horizon, left behind a city that felt like a dream, half remembered. One could sense the cool night air, crisp against the skin, and hear the distant howl of a lone hyena, a sound that blended seamlessly with the rustle of palm fronds. Petra's decline was not a tale of ruin, but of transformation, where the unknown aspects, the lost ledgers of trade, the unspoken decisions of kings, added a layer of intrigue, like a subtle melody in a lullaby. As the moon rose higher, casting a silvery veil over the cliffs, the city settled into its solitude. The sensory details of this era, preserved in the archaeological record, paint a picture of inevitable change. The warm hue of sandstone under twilight, the faint crunch of footsteps on gravel paths, The earthy taste of dust on the tongue. Reports from the Nabatean sites emphasize how trade shifts not only altered economies, but reshaped lives, drawing people away to newer horizons. Yet in Petra, the mysteries endured, a calming enigma that invited reflection rather than alarm. Expanding on these shifts, one might consider the broader historical examples drawn from similar declines elsewhere. In the ruins of Palmyra, far to the north, echoes of economic realignment offer parallels. Though distinct from Petra's story, there too trade routes faltered. But Petra's case stands alone in its desert isolation, where the winds carried away not just goods, but the very essence of a civilization. Archaeological findings, such as those from the Byzantine period layers in the city center, reveal a slow layering of abandonment. Layers of sand burying tools and trinkets, each stratum a whisper of what was lost. Through it all, the tone remains detached, observing the consequences with a gentle wit. The trader's departure, for instance, was like a final bow in a play that had run its course. The audience, the winds and stones, applauding with soft sighs. The unknowns, those elusive threads, add a poetic depth, reminding us that not all stories end in clarity. As the night deepened, Petra lay in peaceful repose, its mysteries a soothing balm for the weary mind. In this serene narrative, one final sensory detail emerges: the faint, rhythmic pulse of the wind through the canyons, like a heartbeat slowing to rest. And so, as the stars wheeled overhead, the city whispered of transitions yet to come, gently leading toward the next chapter in the tapestry of time. In the hushed glow of twilight, deep within the rose-hued cliffs of Petra, a Nabatean elite's villa, carved from ancient stone, offered sanctuary from the desert winds. Here, in the 3rd century CE, amid the labyrinthine canyons, life unfolded with a quiet elegance, far removed from the clamor of the world outside. Imagine entering this haven, where the air carried whispers of frankincense, and the soft flicker of oil lamps danced upon polished walls, their warm light revealing intricate carvings that told stories of bygone eras. The villa, hewn into the sandstone with the precision of a master artisan, was a testament to the Nabatean ingenuity, its chambers echoing with the subtle rustle of silk robes as elites moved through their daily rhythms. At the heart of this abode stood the Great Hall, a space where the air hung heavy with the aroma of spices, cinnamon, and myrrh wafting from bronze censers that glowed like embers in the dim light. The elites, clad in flowing garments of finest silk imported from distant lands, gathered here for their evening repasts. A woman of the household, her robe shimmering with subtle embroidery of golden threads, reclined on a cushioned bench, her fingers tracing the cool edge of a marble table. The table itself was a marvel, inlaid with fragments of lapis and onyx, reflecting the flickering lamps that cast long, soothing shadows across the room. As servants moved with graceful silence, bearing platters of roasted lamb, seasoned with herbs from terraced gardens. The scene evoked a gentle symphony of senses. The meat's tender succulence mingled with the earthy scent of baked flatbreads, while the faint clink of goblets filled with date, sweetened wine added a rhythmic undertone, like a lullaby carried on the breeze. Life in this villa was a tapestry of refined opulence, where every detail whispered of prosperity and care. The walls, smoothed by generations of hands, bore faint traces of frescoes depicting lush oases and mythical beasts, their colors softened by time into a palette of muted golds and russets. In the cooler hours of the morning, the elite would rise to the gentle call of doves cooing from hidden niches, their feathers ruffling in the dawn light that filtered through narrow windows. A man of the house, perhaps an advisor to the king, would don his silk robe, the fabric cool against his skin, and wander to the villa's inner courtyard. There, a fountain bubbled softly, its waters drawn from ancient aqueducts that channeled the scarce mountain streams into this pocket of paradise. The sound was a constant, murmuring companion, blending with the distant hum of bees visiting the scattered pots of blooming jasmine, their petals releasing a sweet, intoxicating fragrance that lingered in the air like a forgotten dream. Meals were not mere sustenance, but rituals of leisure, unfolding slowly under the watchful eyes of carved guardians etched into the stone. Seated on low couches draped in fine linens, the elites dined with an unhurried grace, their conversations a soft murmur that wove through the room like threads of silk. A bowl of fresh figs, plump and sun-warmed, might be passed among them, each bite releasing a burst of sweetness that contrasted with the subtle bitterness of olives preserved in oil. The oil lamps, with their wicks trimmed to a perfect glow, illuminated faces softened by the warm light, where subtle smiles hinted at shared jests, perhaps a witty remark about the day's minor intrigues, delivered with the lightness of a feather drifting on the wind. These moments were cocooned in comfort, the villa's thick walls muffling the outer world's harshness, allowing the inhabitants to savor the tranquility of their privileged existence. Yet beneath this veneer of serenity lay an undercurrent of mystery, a whisper of enigma that added a layer of intrigue to the daily flow. It was said that the villa harbored treasures long lost to the sands of time, ornate jewelry boxes filled with gems that gleamed like stars, or scrolls inscribed with ancient wisdom, vanished without a trace during the uncertain years of Roman influence. One might imagine a hidden alcove, its entrance concealed behind a movable stone panel, where such valuables were once stored. In the quiet of night, when the lamps burned low and the air grew still, a faint draft would stir the shadows, carrying with it the elusive scent of aged cedar, as if the treasures themselves yearned to be rediscovered. This mystery, untouched by the tales of traders or queens from other corners of history, lent a subtle depth to the villa's atmosphere, a gentle puzzle that invited contemplation rather than alarm. The elites spoke of it in hushed tones, their words laced with a wit as dry as the desert, turning the unknown into a comforting story passed around the table like a shared goblet. As the day waned, the villa transformed into a haven of repose. The elites retreated to their private chambers, where beds of carved wood were softened by layers of woolen blankets and silk throws, their textures inviting a deep, restorative sleep. The air, cooled by the evening breeze funneling through the canyons, carried the distant scent of night-blooming flowers, their petals unfurling under the stars. Here, in the embrace of opulence, one could almost hear the stone itself sighing with contentment, its ancient carvings standing sentinel over dreams woven from sensory memories, the lingering taste of spiced wine, the warm caress of lamplight, the soft echo of footsteps on polished floors. Life in this Nabatean elite's home was a delicate balance, a lullaby of luxury that endured through the ages, its secrets guarded by the very rocks that cradled it. To expand upon this scene, consider the intricate details of daily adornment. The women of the household might spend their afternoons in a sun-dappled alcove, applying kohl to their eyes with ivory tools, the pigment's earthy aroma mingling with the floral oils rubbed into their skin. Each stroke was deliberate, a ritual that transformed the ordinary into the exquisite, much like the way the villa's architects had shaped raw stone into art. Meanwhile, in the villa's storerooms, jars of preserved delicacies, honeyed nuts, and dried fruits waited in the cool dark, their scents seeping out to tease the senses, a reminder of the abundance that defined this life. The mystery of the lost treasures deepened with each passing season, a subtle thread in the fabric of existence, perhaps an ornate necklace, its beads of amber and gold, once worn at feasts, had slipped into obscurity during a long forgotten gathering, its absence noted only in the quiet exchanges between servants. This enigma, distinct from any other tales, served as a gentle prompt for reflection, a way to ponder the impermanence of wealth even in such a haven. Yet it never overshadowed the prevailing calm. Instead, it added a layer of poetic intrigue, like the faint outline of a constellation in the night sky. In the villa's gardens, tended with meticulous care, herbs and flowers thrived in terraced beds, their leaves rustling softly in the wind. The elites would stroll there at dusk, the gravel paths cool underfoot, discussing matters of art and philosophy with a wit that sparkled like the stars above. One might quip about the stubbornness of a particular vine, comparing it to the unyielding nature of the cliffs themselves, drawing laughter that echoed gently through the air. As evening deepened, the oil lamps were replenished, their flames steady and reassuring, casting a golden haze over the great hall once more. The cycle of life in this Nabatean elite's home continued, a soothing rhythm that whispered of enduring grace. And as the night settled in, one could feel the transition approaching, a subtle shift toward stories yet untold, where the echoes of Petra's mysteries would lead onward in the hushed expanse of 3rd century Arabia, where the sands stretched like an endless sea under a canopy of stars. The Bedouin traders rose with the first blush of dawn, clad in heavy wool, cloaks woven from the fleece of distant flocks. These nomads moved with the quiet assurance of shadows across the dunes. Their days unfolded in a rhythm as ancient as the winds that sculpted the desert. A dance of survival and commerce, etched into the very grains of sand, guided by instincts honed through generations. They led caravans of laden camels through the whispering wilderness, the creaking of leather saddles, and the soft sigh of sandy air, weaving a lullaby for the weary traveler. Each morning began in the dim light, when the horizon bled from indigo to pale gold. The traders, their faces etched with lines of sun and wind, stirred from beneath their cloaks, the fabric heavy and warm against the cool desert chill. They emerged from low tents of goat hair, structures that blended seamlessly into the undulating terrain, as if the earth itself had birthed them with deliberate motions. They kindled small fires from dried camel dung and thorny scrub, the flames flickering like distant memories. The air carried the faint, earthy scent of brewing coffee beans, roasted over the coals in battered copper pots, a ritual that infused the dawn with a subtle wit. For what better way to greet the vast unknown than with a sip of something both bitter and reviving? As the steam rose, mingling with the first rays of sun, they murmured prayers in low tones, invoking the spirits of the sands and the gods of trade. Their voices, a gentle murmur that faded into the breeze. Once fortified, the traders turned to their beasts, the camels kneeling in patient rows like sentinels of the desert. These sturdy creatures, with their long lashes and swaying humps, were the lifeblood of the routine, carrying spices, frankincense, and bolts of dyed silk across unforgiving paths. The nomads moved among them, their wool cloaks swaying with each step, adjusting the loads with ropes of twisted palm fiber. The saddles creaked softly under the weight, a sound like whispered secrets, while the camel's warm breath mingled with the dry, mineral tang of the air. It was a moment of quiet communion, the trader's hands rough yet tender as they patted the animal's flanks, sharing in the silent understanding that bound man and beast in this arid world. With a gentle tug on the reins, the caravan stirred to life, the first steps crunching into the fine sand that shifted like silk beneath their feet as the sun climbed higher, casting a golden haze over the dunes. The journey truly began. The traders guided their procession with an innate sense of direction, their eyes scanning the horizon for the subtle markers that only they could read: the slant of a rock formation, the curve of a wadi, or the faint tracks of predecessors etched into the earth. The sandy air enveloped them, carrying whispers of distant oases and the faint, spicy aroma of the goods they bore. Each step was a meditation, the rhythm of the camel's plodding gait lulling the mind into a state of serene focus. Here, in the heart of the desert, time itself seemed to slow, the heat radiating from the sands in waves that wrapped around them like a warm embrace. A subtle wit lingered in their thoughts, for these nomads often joked in hushed tones about the dune's capricious nature, how one might shift overnight and erase a path, turning the familiar into the unknown. Midday brought a pause in the shade of a rocky outcrop, or beneath the sparse canopy of a gaff tree, where the traders rested to escape the sun's relentless gaze. They unpacked simple meals from their saddlebags, flatbread baked the night before, still carrying the faint smokiness of the fire, paired with dates plump and sweet, their juices a brief respite from the dryness. The air was alive with sensory details, the gritty texture of sand on their lips, the cool trickle of water from goatskin bags, and the distant call of a hoopoe bird echoing across the emptiness. In these moments, they shared stories passed down through Nabatean inscriptions, those ancient carvings on stone that spoke of trade routes and prosperous exchanges. From the cliffs of Hegra, where such inscriptions detailed the flow of myrrh and incense, the traders drew inspiration, adapting the wisdom of their forebears to navigate the present. Yet woven into their routines was a mystery that added a layer of enchantment. The unrecorded trade schedules, no scrolls or tablets, marked their meetings at hidden wells or seasonal markets. Instead, they relied on an unspoken calendar, perhaps aligned with the phases of the moon or the migration of winds, a secret rhythm that eluded even the most astute observers. As the afternoon waned, the caravan pressed on, the traders' wool cloaks now dusted with a fine layer of gold from the settling sand. The sensory world intensified the soft rustle of fabric against skin, the metallic taste of salt on the breeze from evaporated sweat, and the occasional distant rumble of thunder promising rain in a land where water was a miracle. They moved with a detached grace, their minds attuned to the consequences of missteps. A twisted ankle on a hidden stone, or a camel straying into a sinkhole, events noted not with alarm, but as part of the desert's indifferent ballet. Subtle wit surfaced in their banter, light-hearted quips about outwitting the sands. For in this vast theater, humor was a shield against the grim realities. Evening descended like a gentle veil, the sky ablaze with hues of crimson and violet before yielding to the star-strewn night. The traders sought shelter in depressions between dunes or near ancient Nabatean way stations, ruins that hinted at a more structured past. There they unloaded their burdens, the camels sighing in relief as they were unhitched, their coats gleaming under the fading light. Fires were lit once more, casting a warm glow that danced across the wool cloaks and illuminated faces marked by the day's labors. Meals were prepared with care, stews of dried meat and herbs simmered in clay pots that had traveled these routes for years, their flavors a comforting echo of home. The air grew cooler, carrying the scent of sage and the soft crackle of flames, while the traders gathered in a circle, their voices low and melodic as they recounted tales from inscriptions found in places like Madain Sale, speaking of successful trades and elusive fortunes. In these quiet hours, the mystery of the unrecorded schedules deepened, a puzzle that enveloped their lives like the night sky. How did they know, without fail, when a caravan from the north would arrive, or when the winds would shift to favor a quicker passage? It was as if the desert itself whispered secrets, a knowledge preserved in oral traditions, and the stars' alignments, untouched by the scribes of more settled lands. Perhaps it was the influence of Nabatean ancestors, whose inscriptions at Al-Ula detailed not just goods, but the intangible flows of commerce, a legacy that lived on in the traders' veins. As the night deepened, the traders settled into their cloaks, the sand forming a soft bed beneath them. The creaking saddles fell silent, replaced by the gentle hum of the wind and the distant howl of a fox, a lullaby that eased them toward sleep. In this serene rhythm, they found peace, their days a testament to endurance and the subtle dance of life in the sands. Yet, as the first hints of dawn stirred the horizon once more, the routines of the Bedouin traders flowed seamlessly into the promise of another day, where the mysteries of the desert awaited their unveiling, leading toward tales yet to be told. In the hushed expanse of 3rd century Arabia, where the sun dipped low over endless dunes, the Bedouin nomads moved with the quiet rhythm of the desert itself, clad in flowing tunics of undyed wool, their garments whispering against the sand. They tended to their camels in scattered camps that seemed to emerge from the earth like ancient whispers. The air carried a warm, earthy scent, mingled with the faint musk of camel hide and the distant tang of sagebrush baking under the afternoon light. Here, amid the soft rustle of wind-swept sands, the nomads' lives unfolded in a gentle cadence, far from the clamor of distant markets or the opulence of settled courts. Each dawn broke with a subtle glow, painting the horizon in hues of pale rose and amber. As the Bedouin rose to greet their charges, the camels, those stoic wanderers of the arid lands, stirred with soft grunts that echoed like distant thunder, muted by vast distances. These sounds, rhythmic and reassuring, wove through the camp like a lullaby, reminding all that life persisted in the embrace of the unforgiving sands. The nomads approached their herds with practiced ease, their hands calloused, yet gentle, tracing the coarse fur of the animal's flanks. The touch brought a warmth, a silent communion between man and beast, born of generations wandering these paths. In the heart of the camp, simple shelters of woven palm fronds and animal skins offered shade from the climbing sun. Here, the Bedouin prepared the morning feed, scooping handfuls of dried acacia leaves and thorny shrubs into wooden troughs. The camels lowered their long necks, their breath warm and humid against the cool morning air, exhaling in contented sighs that carried hints of the previous night's forage. The scent of crushed herbs lingered, a blend of bitter and sweet, evoking the vast plateaus where these plants thrived. As the animals munched, the nomads moved among them, their tunics swaying like whispers of fabric in the breeze, checking for signs of wear or illness with a keen eye honed by ancestral knowledge. Watering the camels was a ritual of patience and care, drawing from hidden oases that dotted the landscape like forgotten jewels. These pockets of life, with their murky pools ringed by date palms, offered a respite from the dryness, their surfaces shimmering under the midday sun. The nomads would lead their herds to these spots, the camels' padded feet sinking softly into the damp earth, a contrast to the crunch of sand elsewhere. As the animals drank, lapping with deliberate slurps, the air filled with the fresh, mineral tang of water meeting parched throats. A subtle wit colored these moments. One might imagine the camels exchanging knowing glances, as if sharing ancient jokes about the humans who relied on them so utterly. Breeding and nurturing the young formed the core of this husbandry, a cycle as timeless as the stars above. In the cooler evenings, when the desert air softened and the first stars pierced the twilight, the Bedouin would gather to observe the mating rituals. The males, with their imposing humps swaying like burdened sails, would circle the females in a dance of instinct and grace. The air hummed with low rumbles, a symphony of courtship that blended with the distant howl of a desert fox, creating a tapestry of sound that soothed the soul. Newborn calves, wobbly on their legs, nuzzled against their mothers, their first cries soft and mewling, like the wind through narrow canyons. The nomads watched over these vulnerable beginnings, wrapping the young in soft cloths and shielding them from the night's chill. Their actions, a quiet testament to the bonds forged in survival. Yet amid this serene routine, a mystery lingered like a shadow in the dunes. The enigma of unrecorded camel breeds, archaeological whispers from sites like the ancient wells of Al-Ula or the rock carvings near Hegra suggested lineages lost to time. Breeds perhaps adapted to specific hardships that no longer scarred the land. Fragments of bone, unearthed by patient diggers centuries later, hinted at animals taller and more resilient, their forms etched in faded petroglyphs that depicted creatures with broader humps or finer coats. The Bedouins spoke of these in hushed tones around evening fires, where the flicker of flames danced on their faces, weaving tales of breeds that vanished with shifting sands or forgotten migrations. Was it drought that claimed them, or the slow erosion of knowledge passed from one generation to the next? This uncertainty added a layer of intrigue, a subtle puzzle that invited contemplation rather than alarm, as if the desert itself guarded these secrets to preserve the wonder of the unknown. Throughout the day, the nomads tended to the camel's health with remedies drawn from the land. A paste of crushed aloe and desert resins soothed irritated skin, applied with fingers that moved in slow, deliberate strokes. The scent of the balm, sharp and healing, mingled with the ever-present dust, creating an aroma that spoke of resilience and renewal in moments of rest. The Bedouin might pause to share a simple meal of flatbread and dates, the sweet juiciness of the fruit contrasting with the dry air, all while the camels rested nearby, their even breathing a steady backdrop. These interludes carried a calming wit. One could almost hear the unspoken jests about a camel's stubborn nature, delivered with a gentle smile that softened the hardships as the sun arced toward the western horizon, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers across the sands. The camp settled into evening tranquility. The nomads gathered the herds for the night, their tunics now dusted with the day's travels, and secured them in makeshift corrals of thorn bushes. The air cooled, carrying the faint, soothing fragrance of night-blooming flowers hidden in rocky crevices, while the stars emerged in a velvet sky. Camel grunts softened to murmurs, a lullaby that lulled both beast and human into repose. Here, in this timeless rhythm, the Bedouin found solace, their lives intertwined with their charges in a dance of mutual dependence. Historical echoes from Nabatean artifacts, such as the camel carvings in Petra's ancient tombs, affirmed the depth of this tradition, revealing how these animals sustained trade routes and migrations long before written records. Yet the Bedouin avoided the paths of merchants or rulers, focusing instead on the intimate art of husbandry. As night deepened, the camp grew still, the soft sigh of the wind the only sound, preparing the way for dreams of endless horizons. And so, as the moon rose full and luminous, casting a silver glow over the dunes, the story of the Bedouin and their camels faded into the quiet vastness, a gentle prelude to tales yet to unfold in the heart of Arabia. In the warm hush of a 3rd century Arabian market, where the sands whispered secrets to the wind, Bedouin traders moved like shadows cast by ancient palms. These nomads, draped in flowing cloaks of weathered wool, carried the essence of the desert in their every step. Their faces, etched with lines of sun and time, held a quiet wisdom as they gathered under canvas awnings that fluttered gently in the breeze. Here, amid the soft murmur of voices and the distant bleat of camels, they bartered goods that bridged distant worlds, their exchanges unfolding like a slow, rhythmic dance under the vast, unblinking sky. The air was thick with the scent of resin, a sweet, resinous perfume that lingered from the bundles of frankincense they unfurled with careful hands. These traders, masters of the arid trails, brought treasures from the remote hills of Dhofar and the hidden wadis of the Hejaz, where hardy trees yielded their golden tears under the watchful gaze of the stars. Pliny the Elder, in his meticulous natural history, spoke of this frankincense as a gift of the gods, harvested by daring souls who braved scorching winds and thorny thickets to tap the sap that hardened into aromatic nuggets. The Bedouins handled it with reverence, their fingers tracing the irregular shapes as if reading ancient scripts, resin's warmth evoking memories of moonlit gatherings around flickering fires. Beside the frankincense lay other goods, each with its own story woven into the fabric of the desert's vast tapestry. Myrrh, that bittersweet balm, arrived in small, sealed pouches, its earthy aroma mingling with the frankincense to create a soothing haze that softened the market's edges. Pliny described myrrh as a remedy for ailments of the body and spirit, used by healers from Rome to the farthest reaches of Persia, and the Bedouins traded it for its reputed powers, bartering quietly with merchants from distant lands. The nomads' cloaks, dyed in earthy tones from natural pigments, brushed against stacks of spices, cinnamon bark curling like scrolls, and cassia that released a spicy whisper when touched. Goods that Pliny noted were as prized as gold for their ability to transform simple meals into feasts of flavor. As the sun climbed higher, casting a golden glow over the stalls, the Bedouins engaged in their timeless rituals of exchange. A trader, his cloak billowing like a gentle sail, would lift a handful of frankincense pearls, their translucent surfaces catching the light, and offer them to a buyer from the coastal cities. The buyer, perhaps a seafarer with salt-kissed skin, would lean in, inhaling the resin's deep, woody scent that evoked the cool shade of palm groves amid the heat. In return, he might proffer bolts of fine linen, soft as a desert breeze, or beads of polished carnelian that glimmered like captured sunsets. The bartering was a soft-spoken affair, voices low and melodic, laced with the subtle wit of those who lived by the wind's whims. A trader might quip that his frankincense could sweeten even the sourest deal, his words carrying a faint, knowing smile that eased tensions without a hint of sharpness. Sensory details wove through every moment, painting the scene in layers of gentle allure. The market hummed with the rustle of fabrics and the soft clink of weights on balances, while the taste of dates, plump and honeyed, lingered on the air from nearby vendors. One could almost feel the warmth of the sun-baked earth beneath their feet, or hear the faint creak of camel saddles as beasts shifted in the shade. The trader's hands, calloused yet deft, moved with a hypnotic grace, unpacking bundles of dried herbs that released bursts of minty fragrance, or arranging vials of attar oils whose floral notes drifted like distant lullabies. Pliny's accounts brought these elements to life, noting how such goods not only sustained trade routes, but also carried the essence of Arabia's hidden bounty, from the aromatic gums to the rare spices that flavored the tables of emperors. Yet amid this symphony of commerce, there lingered the mystery of unrecorded trade items, those elusive wares that slipped through the annals of history like sand through fingers. Pliny himself hinted at secrets in his writings, mentioning goods that were whispered about but never fully documented. Perhaps exotic resins from unnamed oases, or rare minerals gleaned from forbidden mountains. The Bedouins, guardians of these paths, might have carried small, wrapped parcels whose contents remained veiled, shared only in hushed exchanges under the cover of dusk. One could imagine a trader pausing, his eyes glinting with subtle amusement, as he alluded to a fragrance so rare it could mend a weary soul, or a spice that evoked dreams of forgotten lands. These mysteries added a layer of intrigue, a gentle puzzle that invited contemplation without demanding answers, much like the way the wind carried echoes of distant dunes. As the day wore on, the traders' routines unfolded with a calming rhythm, their cloaks swaying to the beat of negotiations that felt as natural as the ebb and flow of tides. They exchanged not just goods, but tales of how frankincense was once offered to deities in ancient temples, as Pliny recounted, or how myrrh adorned the rituals of kings. The scent of roasting coffee beans, though not yet widespread, might have been a precursor in some form, adding a nutty undertone to the air and evoking the comfort of evening fires. Sensory richness abounded. The cool touch of a polished amulet passed from hand to hand, the visual splendor of dyed yarns in hues of ochre and indigo, and the auditory lull of bargaining that rose and fell like a soft breath. In this world of exchange, the Bedouins embodied a quiet resilience, their trade goods linking the isolated tribes to the broader currents of the ancient world. Pliny's observations painted them as shrewd, yet hospitable figures, navigating routes that crossed vast, unforgiving landscapes. One might picture them resting briefly, sharing a sip of cool water infused with mint, its refreshing tang a momentary respite from the day's warmth. The mystery deepened with thoughts of what else they carried, perhaps silks from the east, smuggled through hidden passes, or unguents whose formulas were guarded like tribal lore. These unrecorded items, hinted at in fragments of lore, added a whimsical layer to the narrative, a subtle wit in the idea that some secrets were meant to remain just out of reach, preserved in the desert's eternal silence. As the market began to quiet with the lengthening shadows, the Bedouins prepared to depart, their cloaks gathering the day's scents like memories. The frankincense and myrrh, now dispersed to new hands, carried with them the promise of distant adventures. Yet even as the stars emerged, twinkling like scattered pearls, one couldn't help but ponder the unseen trades, those enigmatic goods that Pliny only glimpsed. In this gentle close, the scene fades into the night, leaving a trail of aromatic whispers and the soft promise of tomorrow's journeys, transitioning seamlessly to tales of other wanderers and their hidden paths. Word count 1,500 in the hushed expanse of the Arabian desert, where the sands whispered secrets to the wind. The women of the Bedouin camps moved with a quiet rhythm that mirrored the gentle sway of palm fronds under a star-strewn sky. It was the 3rd century of the Common Era, a time when the world felt vast and timeless, and in these nomadic havens, life unfolded in soft layers of tradition and toil. Draped in wool veils that caught the fading light like threads of twilight. The women gathered around low fires, their fingers dancing through bundles of reeds, and wool, with the patience of ancient rivers, carving their paths through stone. The air carried the faint, earthy scent of smoldering embers, mingling with the sharp tang of wild herbs crushed underfoot as they settled into their circles. Each veil, woven from the fleece of hardy sheep that roamed the fringes of the camps, fell in soft folds around their faces, offering a shield against the day's harsh sun and the night's chill whispers. In this serene ritual, the women wove baskets from sun-bleached reeds, their hands moving in a hypnotic cadence that echoed the soft rustle of leaves in a distant oasis. The reeds themselves seemed alive, whispering as they bent and intertwined, their dry, papery texture yielding to skilled touches that transformed them into vessels of everyday utility containers for gathered dates, stores of precious water, or cradles for the youngest among them. As the firelight flickered, casting warm, golden hues across their veiled forms, the women's voices rose in low, melodic murmurs, sharing tales that wove through the night like the threads in their hands. These stories, passed from one generation to the next, spoke of the enduring spirit of their people, of journeys across endless dunes where the horizon blurred into eternity. Yet beneath this calm surface lay the mystery of tasks unrecorded, shadows in the annals of time that hinted at the unseen labors of these women. Inscriptions from Petra, etched into the rose-red rock by forgotten hands, offered fleeting glimpses, carvings that depicted figures in similar veils, engaged in acts of creation and care, but left much to the imagination. What hidden rituals did they perform under the cover of night, when the stars bore silent witness? Perhaps it was the blending of herbs for healing salves, drawn from knowledge whispered only among themselves, or the mending of familial bonds through quiet counsel that history had overlooked. The camps themselves were simple sanctuaries, clusters of tents fashioned from goat hair and woven mats, nestled against the protective embrace of rocky outcrops. Here, in the cool shade of midday, the women paused from their weaving to tend to the rhythms of daily life. The soft thud of a pestle against a stone mortar filled the air as they ground grains into flour, the scent of warm barley rising like a gentle fog. Firelight danced on their veils, illuminating the intricate patterns, subtle zigzags, and flowing lines that spoke of ancestral designs, each stitch a testament to their resourcefulness. These veils, more than mere fabric, were symbols of resilience, shielding not just from the elements, but from the gaze of a world that seldom paused to understand their depth. In the quiet hours before dawn, when the desert sky deepened to a velvet blue, the women rose with the first stirrings of life. They moved through the camp with a grace that seemed to coax the sun from its slumber, their footsteps muffled by the sand that shifted like silk beneath them. The air grew crisp, carrying the distant call of a nightingale echoing from a hidden grove, a sound that blended with the faint crackle of rekindled fires. Around these flames, they resumed their work, weaving baskets that would hold the fruits of their gatherings, clusters of dates, plump and sweet, or bundles of aromatic resins collected from the sparse vegetation. Each basket emerged as a work of art, its weave tight and precise, the reeds' natural hues varying from pale gold to deep amber, reflecting the play of light that filtered through the tent flaps. Yet amid this peaceful routine, there lingered an unspoken enigma, a veil over the full scope of their contributions. Petra's ancient inscriptions, preserved in the weathered stone, mentioned women in passing guardians of hearth and heritage, their names etched in fading scripts that spoke of offerings and alliances. But what of the daily mysteries, the unchronicled moments when they navigated the delicate balance of survival? Did they hold secret knowledge of the stars, using them to guide unseen paths through the desert? Or perhaps they preserved oral histories, tales of resilience that slipped through the cracks of written records, ensuring that the essence of their world endured beyond the sands of time. As the sun climbed higher, casting a gentle warmth over the camp, the women shared light-hearted exchanges, their words laced with a subtle wit that softened the hardships of their existence. See how the reed bends, but does not break, one might say with a knowing smile hidden behind her veil, her voice a soothing lull that carried the wisdom of ages. These interactions, simple and profound, wove a tapestry of community, where every gesture held meaning. The fire's glow highlighted the texture of their veils, the wool soft against their skin, a constant companion in a landscape that demanded fortitude. In the afternoons, when the heat mellowed into a golden haze, they turned to other tasks, perhaps preparing meals from the day's forages, roasting roots over the fire, their skins crackling gently as the aroma of earth and spice filled the air. The sound of water trickling from a goatskin bag into clay vessels added a rhythmic backdrop, each drop a reminder of the preciousness of life in this arid realm. Here, too, the mystery deepened. What unseen skills did they employ to sustain their families? Skills that left no trace in the scrolls of historians. Inscriptions from Petra hinted at women's roles in communal rituals. Yet they remained silent on the intricacies, leaving room for wonder about the herbal lore they might have guarded, or the subtle diplomacy they practiced in whispers. Evening brought a deeper calm, the sky transforming into a canvas of deepening blues and purples, studded with stars that seemed to pulse with ancient stories. The women gathered once more, their weaving continuing by the fire's soft light, the reeds rustling like distant waves. The air grew cool, carrying the faint scent of night-blooming flowers from oases miles away, a perfume that lingered like a forgotten dream. In these moments, their veils caught the starlight, shimmering faintly as if woven with threads of the cosmos itself. As the night deepened, the women's thoughts turned inward, reflecting on the enduring cycle of their lives. The mystery of their unrecorded tasks remained a quiet undercurrent, a source of subtle strength that bound them to their heritage. Petra's echoes, carved in stone, served as faint guides, but it was their own resilience that truly illuminated the path. And so, as the fire dimmed to glowing embers, the scene faded into the vast embrace of the desert, a gentle prelude to the stories yet to unfold, where the whispers of the wind would carry onward to new horizons in the hushed expanse of 3rd century CE Arabia, where the desert sands whispered secrets to the wind. Bedouin nomads roamed under a canopy of stars that seemed to cradle the earth in eternal twilight. These wanderers, draped in flowing cloaks of wool and linen that billowed like ghosts in the warm breeze, paused at ancient shrines etched into the red rock faces. Here, amid the vast silence, they performed rituals as old as the dunes themselves, offerings made not in haste, but with a reverent rhythm that echoed the pulse of the desert. The air grew thick with the sweet, resinous scent of frankincense, its wisps curling lazily upward like faint dreams ascending to the heavens, while soft chants murmured through the night, a lullaby of voices blending with the gentle rustle of palm fronds. The nomads gathered at these sacred sites, hidden among the wavering shadows of sandstone pillars that rose like silent guardians from the sands. Each figure moved with a graceful deliberation, their cloaks whispering against the cool ground as they knelt before weathered altars, adorned with simple tokens, polished stones, gathered from distant wadis, or clusters of dried herbs tied with strands of camel hair. In this era, long before the sweeping changes of later centuries, the Bedouin held to traditions rooted in the land's ancient spirits, drawing from the Nabatean legacy as revealed in fragments of archaeological reports from sites like Hegra and Madain Sali. These reports speak of rituals that honored the unseen forces of nature, where the nomads sought harmony with the arid world around them. Their practices, a tapestry woven from the threads of ancestor worship and celestial observation. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of deepening indigo, the nomads would light small fires of aromatic woods, the flames flickering like distant stars brought to earth. The warmth of the fire kissed their skin, a gentle caress against the chill of the night, while the smoke carried prayers aloft, invisible threads connecting the mortal realm to the divine. One might imagine an elder leading the gathering, his voice a soft cadence that wove through the air, reciting invocations passed down through generations, words that evoked the mystery of unwritten rituals, those elusive customs never inscribed on stone or papyrus, but preserved in the collective memory of the tribe. This mystery, as subtle as the shifting sands, lay in the oral traditions that eluded the scribes of more settled societies, a secret language of gestures and murmurs that archaeologists have pieced together from faint rock carvings and scattered artifacts, hinting at ceremonies where the boundary between the living and the spirits blurred into a serene haze. In these moments, the nomads offered not grand sacrifices, but humble gifts that spoke of their nomadic life, perhaps a handful of dates. Their sweetness, a symbol of life's fleeting bounty, or a vial of precious myrrh, its earthy aroma mingling with the night air to create a soothing balm for the soul. The chants grew softer, a melodic hum that resonated like the distant call of a nightingale, each note infused with a subtle wit, as if the desert itself were sharing an ancient jest about the impermanence of all things. One ritual involved the tracing of patterns in the sand with a fingertip, symbols that evoked the constellations above, their lines glowing faintly in the moonlight before the wind erased them. A reminder of the ephemeral nature of human endeavors. Archaeological evidence from sites in the Arabian Peninsula suggests such practices were common, with petroglyphs depicting robed figures in postures of reverence, their forms etched into the rock as if frozen in time. The scene unfolded with a calming rhythm, the nomads' movements deliberate and unhurried, like the slow ebb of a desert stream. The air was alive with sensory details, the crisp bite of the night air against exposed skin, the faint grit of sand beneath bare feet, and the occasional flutter of a cloak caught in a whisper of wind. One could almost feel the weight of the stars pressing down, their light a gentle blanket that enveloped the gathering, while the incense lingered, its fragrance a thread of continuity, linking past and present. In this space, the mystery deepened. These rituals, unbound by written doctrine, held an allure that modern eyes might never fully grasp, as if each performance carried echoes of forgotten deities, beings of the wind and stone, whose favor was sought through acts of quiet devotion rather than overt display. As the rituals progressed, the nomads might share tales around the fire, their voices low and soothing, weaving narratives of ancestral journeys across the vast dunes. These stories, drawn from historical accounts in reports like those of the Roman-era travelers who documented Bedouin customs without fully understanding them, added layers to the ceremony, infusing it with a sense of timeless wonder. The soft chants evolved into harmonious refrains, each word a brushstroke on the canvas of the night, evoking the rustle of leaves in hidden oases or the distant howl of a desert fox. Sounds that blended seamlessly with the ritual's flow. Here, in the absence of rigid temples, the entire landscape became a sanctuary, where every grain of sand held potential meaning, and the mystery of the unwritten lay in the personal interpretations each nomad brought to the rites. Yet, even in this serene tableau, there were moments of quiet reflection on the consequences of their world, a detached acknowledgement of how the harsh desert could claim lives, not through graphic tales, but through the subtle absence of those who had wandered too far. The nomads offered prayers for protection, their words a soothing murmur that carried the weight of generations, ensuring that the rituals served as a bridge to resilience rather than despair. Archaeological findings, such as the remnants of ritual fires and offerings uncovered in the Negev and Hijaz regions, confirm the prevalence of these practices, painting a picture of a people deeply attuned to their environment, their faith a fluid, adaptive force. As the night deepened, the gatherings would draw to a close, the flames dimming to embers that glowed like fading memories. The nomads rose, their cloaks settling around them like protective shrouds, and with a final, hushed incantation, they dispersed into the darkness, leaving the shrines to their solitary vigil. In this way, the religious practices of the Bedouin wove a tapestry of continuity, a lullaby that soothed the soul amid the vastness of the desert. And as the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, hinting at the endless cycle of day and night, one might feel a gentle pull toward what lay beyond a transition to tales of other wanderers and their own sacred paths, where the mysteries of the ancient world continued to unfold in the hushed expanse of the Arabian desert, where the sun dipped low and painted the sands in shades of amber and rose. A circle of nomads gathered around a low fire. They were Bedouin traders of the 3rd century CE, draped in simple tunics of woven wool, their faces etched with the quiet endurance of those who wandered the endless dunes. The air carried a gentle whisper of sandy breezes, carrying with it the faint, earthy scent of crushed herbs steeping in clay pots. Here, amid the vast silence, health was not a mere necessity, but a sacred rhythm, woven into the fabric of survival, like the threads of their garments against the cooling night. The nomads moved with a deliberate grace, their tunics fluttering lightly in the wind as they tended to the camp's evening rituals. Far from the clamor of settled cities, these wanderers relied on the wisdom of ancient medical texts, echoes of Greek and Persian knowledge that had filtered into their world through trade routes and whispered tales. In scrolls and oral traditions passed down from elder to elder, they drew from the likes of Dioscorides to Materia Medica, which spoke of nature's remedies in the arid lands. A woman with silver strands in her hair, her tunic soft against her skin, knelt by the fire, grinding dried leaves of artemisia between stones. The herb's bitter aroma rose with the steam, mingling with the warm, resinous notes of frankincense that crackled in the flames. This was no hurried act. It was a soothing cadence, a lullaby of care that eased the body's ailments under the vast, star-strewn sky. In these desert camps, health practices unfolded like a gentle story told at dusk. The nomads, their feet calloused from the shifting sands, understood that the desert's harshness demanded harmony with its gifts. They brewed infusions from the sparse vegetation, herbs like myrrh and aloe, which grew stubbornly in hidden wadis. A man, his tunic stained with the day's dust, would inhale the rising vapors from a pot of steaming chamomile, the warm mist caressing his face like a soft breath. The steam carried a calming essence, its floral undertones blending with the cool, dry air, offering relief from the fatigue of endless marches. These remedies were not born of chance, but of generations of observation, as detailed in the ancient texts of Galen, who noted the balancing properties of such plants for the humors of the body. Each evening, as the sands cooled and the breeze whispered secrets across the dunes, the nomads shared their knowledge in hushed tones. A young woman, her tunic's sleeves rolled up to reveal sun-kissed arms, prepared a poultice of wild thyme and honey, drawing from the lore of early Arab healers who adapted Greek methods to their environment. The honey, gathered from rare desert blooms, added a subtle sweetness to the mix, its sticky warmth a comforting contrast to the night's chill. She applied it gently to a companion's minor wound, the process as rhythmic as a heartbeat, ensuring the skin's barrier against the relentless sun. Sensory memories lingered, the faint, tangy taste of the thyme on the tongue, the soothing warmth seeping into the flesh, and the soft rustle of tunics as bodies shifted in the firelight. Yet, amid this careful tending, a quiet mystery wove through their practices, a shadow of lost knowledge that added a subtle wit to their survival. Whispers spoke of ancient remedy recipes, scrawled in fading inks on fragile parchments, or etched in the minds of long-gone healers, recipes that vanished like mirages in the heat. One tale, drawn from the fringes of historical accounts, like those in the works of Pliny the Elder, hinted at a forgotten blend of desert resins and rare roots that could mend the deepest weariness of the soul. The nomads pondered this in their detached way, for in the desert, loss was as natural as the wind's path. An elder might chuckle softly, his voice a lullaby against the dark, saying, "The sands guard their secrets well, as do the stars above." This mystery lent an air of gentle intrigue to their routines, a reminder that not all healing could be grasped, only felt in the steam's embrace or the herb's faint bitterness. In the camps, the focus turned to preventive care, a serene dance of body and elements. The nomads, clad in their tunics that offered a light shield against the day's glare, practiced breathwork. Inspired by early medical philosophies, they sat in circles, drawing deep inhalations of the clean, arid air, infused with the subtle fragrance of nearby sage bushes. The sage, with its woody, cleansing scent, was burned in small quantities, its smoke curling upward like a silent prayer. This ritual, echoing the balance advocated in Galen's writings, helped ward off the invisible foes of the desert, feverish winds, and unseen maladies. A child, wrapped in a smaller tunic, watched wide-eyed as the smoke danced, the warmth on his skin a comforting prelude to sleep. Sensory details enriched these moments, turning necessity into poetry. The feel of a cool compress made from aloe gel, slick and soothing on sun-parched skin, brought a wave of relief like the first breath of evening. The nomads savored the textures, the gritty sand beneath their feet, the smooth clay of their vessels, and the velvety petals of desert flowers, crushed for ointments. In one such preparation, they mixed ground cumin seeds with olive oil. The spice's warm, nutty aroma filling the air as it was applied to ease digestive discomforts. This blend, referenced in ancient texts as a harmonizer of the inner body, carried a faint, spicy tang that lingered on the lips, a subtle reminder of the desert's bounty. As nights deepened, the nomads' health practices extended to communal well-being, fostering a resilience that was both practical and profound. They shared stories of herbs like coriander, its fresh, citrus-like scent brightening the camp's atmosphere, used to refresh the mind and spirit. These tales, infused with a detached wit, often ended with a light-hearted nod to the uncertainties of their world. Even the wisest herb knows when to hide from the sandstorm. Drawing from the historical examples in Dioscorides' compendium, they applied coriander infusions to alleviate restlessness. The liquid's cool flow down the throat, a gentle tide against the day's exertions. The mystery of lost recipes persisted, a thread of enigma that added depth to their lore. Legends spoke of a healer from centuries past, whose secret formula for a rejuvenating elixir, perhaps involving rare desert orchids and hidden springs, had slipped into oblivion. This loss was not mourned with drama, but observed with a calm acceptance. As one might watch the stars fade at dawn, the nomads wondered, in their soothing narratives, if such knowledge might resurface one day, carried on the wind like the scent of blooming night flowers. Through it all, their practices remained a testament to adaptation and intuition. In the quiet hours, a nomad might massage aching muscles with an oil infused with wild marjoram, the herb's herbaceous aroma rising like a soft sigh. The oil's warmth spread across the skin, easing tensions built from days of travel. Its effects, a subtle echo of the balance Galen described in his treatises. Sensory layers unfolded the faint crackle of the fire, the whisper of fabric against skin, and the distant howl of a desert fox, all weaving into a tapestry of care. As the stars wheeled overhead and the sandy breezes softened into stillness, the nomads rested, their health rituals complete. In this lullaby of the desert, where herbs and traditions intertwined, they found a fragile peace. Yet, as the night deepened, thoughts turned gently toward the horizons beyond, where other stories awaited in the vast expanse, in the hushed expanse of the Arabian desert, where the 3rd century CE unfolded under a canopy of endless stars. The lives of Bedouin trader children wove a quiet tapestry of wonder and resilience. These young ones, draped in small cloaks of woven wool that fluttered like whispers against the soft sand, moved with the rhythm of the dunes. Their days began with the first light, a gentle glow that painted the horizon in shades of rose and gold, drawing them from the low tents where families gathered in the cool morning air. The fabric of their cloaks, rough yet comforting against their skin, carried the faint scent of smoke from evening fires, a reminder of stories shared under the vast night sky. As the sun climbed higher, the children ventured out to tend the camels, those steadfast companions of the trade routes, clad in their miniature garments, tailored from scraps of their elders' robes. The boys and girls approached the beasts with a mix of awe and familiarity. The camels, with their long lashes and patient eyes, knelt gracefully on the warm earth, their humps casting shadows that danced like silent companions across the sand. The children patted the animals' sides, feeling the coarse hair beneath their fingertips, a texture as enduring as the desert itself. Soft bells around the camels' necks chimed with each shift, a melody as delicate as a lullaby, echoing through the stillness and blending with the whisper of wind swept grains. Helping with the camels was no mere chore. It was a ritual of learning, wrapped in the embrace of the landscape. A young boy, no more than 7 summers old, might lead a calf by a simple rope, his small cloak billowing as he guided the creature to a patch of sparse vegetation. The sand beneath their feet was a bed of velvet, yielding yet firm, warming gradually under the sun's gaze. He would speak softly to the animal, his voice a thread of calm in the vast openness, sharing secrets that only the dunes could hear. Nearby, a girl of similar age gathered dried twigs for the evening's fire, her movements deliberate and graceful, the cloak's hem trailing lightly over the ground, kicking up tiny puffs of dust that sparkled in the light. In these moments, the children embodied the spirit of their nomadic world, their small hands adept at tasks that connected them to the rhythms of survival. They learned to read the wind's subtle shifts, feeling it brush against their cheeks like a knowing breath, carrying hints of distant oases where palm fronds rustled in gentle waves. The air held a dry sweetness, mingled with the earthy aroma of camel breath and the faint spice of herbs crushed underfoot. Yet, amid this daily weave, there lingered a mystery, the unrecorded games of these desert youth, shadows of playtime, etched not in scrolls or stones, but in the fleeting traces of imagination. Archaeological whispers from that era, unearthed in the sands of places like Hegra or the fringes of Petra, hint at such pastimes through scattered artifacts. A carved bone toy, perhaps once tossed in playful arcs, or faint rock markings that might depict children in motion. These relics, preserved by the desert's unyielding grip, suggest games born of necessity and joy. Hidden from the annals of history, one might picture the children fashioning simple toys from what the land provided: pebbles smoothed by wind into makeshift balls, rolled across the sand in races that echoed the camel caravan's journeys. Or perhaps they mimicked the stars' patterns, tracing constellations with sticks in the earth, their laughter a soft ripple against the silence. This mystery, untouched by the chroniclers who favored tales of trade and conquest, adds a layer of enchantment, as if the desert itself guarded these secrets, revealing them only in the quietest hours. As the afternoon waned, the children found pockets of freedom amidst their duties. They might pause by a shallow wadi, where trickles of water gathered after rare rains, the liquid cool and clear against their parched lips. Here, the sand felt different, damp and clinging, a sensory contrast to the dry expanses. With subtle wit, one could imagine a child whispering to a companion, "Even the sand knows when to rest," unlike our elders' endless paths. A light-hearted nod to the trader's ways. Without delving into those routines, they played in ways that left no mark, games invented on the spot, chasing the shadows of circling hawks, their cloaks swirling like miniature storms, or crafting stories from the shapes of clouds drifting lazily overhead. The mystery deepened in these unscripted moments, for no artifact fully captures the essence of such play. Did they sing songs to the wind, or invent riddles based on the camel's patient gaze? The evidence, sparse as it is, from ancient sites like those in the Negev, shows only fragments. A child's footprint beside a fire pit, or a cluster of smoothed stones that might have been arranged in a game. Evenings brought a gentle close to their day, the sun dipping low to bathe the dunes in hues of amber and purple. The children returned to the tents, their cloaks dusted with the day's adventures, carrying the lingering scent of sage and heated stone. Under the vast starlit dome, they huddled close, sharing tales that blended reality with fancy, their voices a soothing murmur against the night's chill. The soft sand cradled them as they settled, its warmth seeping into their bones like a mother's embrace. Here in the quiet, the mystery of their games persisted, a subtle enigma that wove through their lives, untouched by the broader histories. Yet life in the 3rd century CE was not without its shadows, though the children navigated them with a detached grace. Harsh winds might whip across the sands, carrying grains that stung like tiny whispers, reminding them of the desert's dual nature. In such times, they sought shelter, their cloaks pulled tight, focusing on the aftermath, the way the air settled into calm, the stars emerging brighter as if to offer solace. Archaeological finds, such as those from burial sites in the Arabian interior, speak of resilience, with child-sized grave goods suggesting a world where even the young were prepared for journeys beyond. But these details remain peripheral, observed with a gentle distance, emphasizing the enduring spirit rather than the sorrow. Through it all, the Bedouin children of the trade routes carried an innate wisdom, their lives a melody of sensory harmony. The jingle of camel bells, the caress of the breeze, the taste of dates shared in the shade, all wove into a lullaby of existence. As the night deepened, they drifted toward sleep, their dreams perhaps echoing those unrecorded games, mysteries that endure like the stars above. And so, as this tale of young lives fades into the quiet sands, it gently ushers toward the next whisper of history, where other stories await in the vast expanse. Word count 1,500 in the vast expanse of 3rd century Arabia, where the sands whispered secrets of ancient winds, A simple, woven shelter stood as a haven against the unyielding sun. It was a Bedouin tent, its dark fabric stretched taut over a frame of supple branches, a creation born from generations of nomadic ingenuity. Here, under the gentle sway of goat haircloth, men and women draped in heavy wool cloaks found respite, their days unfolding in rhythms as old as the dunes themselves. The air inside carried a hush, laced with the faint, earthy scent of sun-baked wool and distant herbs, inviting a quiet surrender to the day's end. As the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the undulating sands, the tent's inhabitants gathered within its cool embrace. The nomads, their faces etched with lines of wind and time, settled onto woven mats that cradled their weary forms like a mother's arms. These cloaks, heavy with the weight of tradition, wrapped around them like silent guardians, their coarse fibers soft from years of wear. A woman, her hair bound in simple cords, adjusted the fabric flaps at the entrance, allowing a breeze to slip through cool and teasing, carrying whispers of the desert night. The tent, a masterpiece of unseen design, rose and fell with each gust, its structure a mystery preserved in the memories of those who built it, never fully captured in the annals of history. Inside, the fire at the tent's heart crackled softly, a low murmur that spoke of warmth and continuity. Flames danced in restrained patterns, their golden light flickering across the dark walls, illuminating the faces of the gathered family. The scent of smoldering wood mixed with the subtle aroma of brewing herbs, a brew passed down through whispers and gestures, not words. A man, his cloak drawn close, poked at the embers with a slender stick, his movements deliberate and unhurried, as if time itself had slowed within these walls. The children, nestled among the folds of fabric, watched with wide eyes, their small hands tracing the intricate patterns woven into the tent's lining patterns that told stories of migrations and moons. Though no scribe had ever recorded them, life in the tent was a tapestry of simple rituals, each moment woven with the threads of survival and serenity. Mornings began with the soft rustle of fabric as the nomads rose, shaking off the night's chill that settled like a gentle fog. They moved with a grace honed by the desert's demands, their wool cloaks slipping smoothly over their shoulders as they prepared for the day's quiet tasks. One might mend a tear in the tent's fabric, their fingers working the needle with the precision of ancient craft, while another arranged the mats, aligning them just so to catch the morning light filtering through the seams. The air grew warmer then, carrying the faint tang of dew evaporating from the outer hides, a reminder of the night's fleeting moisture. As the hours waned, the tent transformed into a sanctuary of repose. The nomads reclined on their cloaks, the wool's texture a comforting embrace against the hard ground beneath. Conversations flowed in hushed tones, like the murmur of a distant stream, touching on the subtle shifts of the wind or the patterns of stars that guided their wanderings. There was a subtle wit in their words, a light-hearted tease about how the tent seemed to know the secrets of the sands better than they did. Its unrecorded designs holding mysteries that eluded even the wisest elders. No two tents were alike, they said, each a unique creation shaped by the hands of its builders. Yet none of these variations had been etched into stone or parchment. This enigma lingered like a half-forgotten dream, a puzzle passed from one generation to the next, untouched by the chroniclers who favored the clamor of markets and oases. The evening brought a deeper calm, the tent's interior aglow with the fire's embers, which popped and sighed in a lullaby rhythm. Sensory details enveloped the space. The soft flap of fabric against the frame, a sound like whispered confidences, the warm glow that painted the wool cloaks in hues of amber and shadow, the earthy perfume of the ground, mingled with the faint, sweet smoke that curled upward, vanishing into the night. A child might reach out to touch the tent's wall, feeling the give of the woven material, its threads cool and resilient, a silent testament to the ingenuity that had sustained their people through centuries. In these moments, the nomads reflected on their existence, not with the urgency of traders or the toil of animal keepers, but with a detached serenity that acknowledged the desert's vast indifference. Yet even in this peace, there were echoes of the world's hardships, handled with a gentle detachment. A storm might rage outside, its winds howling like distant mourners, but within the tent, the nomads spoke of it only in passing, focusing on the consequences the way the fabric held firm, protecting them as it had done for ages. No graphic tales disrupted the calm. Instead, they shared stories of how their shelters had weathered tempests, their designs adapting in ways that remained a mystery, perhaps borrowed from the winds themselves. This mystery, distinct and profound, set the Bedouin tents apart, a hidden legacy that ethnographic studies from later eras would piece together from oral traditions and faint artifacts, revealing glimpses of a world where form followed function in ways unseen elsewhere. As night deepened, the tent became a vessel of dreams, its woven roof a canopy under which worries dissolved like mist. The cloaks, now blankets, wrapped around sleeping forms, their wool retaining the day's warmth like a cherished memory. The fire dwindled to glowing coals, their crackles fading into the hush, and the air grew still, save for the occasional sigh of the fabric settling. Here, in this woven haven, the nomads found not just shelter, but a profound connection to the land that shaped them. The mystery of their tent designs, unrecorded and ephemeral, added a layer of wonder, a subtle wit in the universe's design that left room for imagination and awe. Through the quiet hours, the tent whispered of continuity, its sensory symphony, a blend of textures, scents, and sounds, lulling its inhabitants into restful slumber. And as the first hints of dawn stirred the sands beyond, the nomads stirred too, ready for another day in their timeless refuge. Yet, even as this chapter of tent life drew to a close, it beckoned toward the broader tapestry of Arabian Nights, where other stories awaited, perhaps in the shadows of forgotten oases or the call of distant horizons. For now, though, the tent stood as a quiet sentinel, its mysteries intact, inviting one last breath of calm before the world awakened once more. Word count 1,500 in the hushed expanse of 3rd century Arabia, where the sun dipped low and painted the horizon in strokes of amber and rose. The ancient trade routes unfurled like silent rivers through the sea of sand. Here, amid the whispering dunes that rose and fell like the breath of a sleeping giant, Bedouin nomads moved with the grace of shadows, cloaked in flowing robes of wool and linen. Their figures blended seamlessly into the twilight, as if the desert itself had birthed them from its golden depths. These were the unseen threads of a vast tapestry, paths etched not by stone or ink, but by the patient tread of camel hooves and the wisdom of generations. Strabo, the keen-eyed Greek chronicler, spoke of these ways in his scrolls, describing how the Arabian interior harbored routes that connected distant oases and forgotten wells. In his accounts, he marveled at the nomad's ability to traverse lands where the air shimmered with heat by day and grew crisp under starlit skies. Yet even Strabo could only glimpse the surface, for these paths were more than mere lines on a map. They were living entities, shaped by the wind's gentle caress and the shifting sands. As the nomads journeyed, their cloaks billowed softly, catching the faint scent of sage and distant rain, a reminder that life persisted in this austere realm. One might imagine a lone caravan at dusk, the nomads pausing to align their course by the North Star, that steadfast beacon piercing the velvet curtain of night. The air grew cool then, carrying the faint rustle of fabric against skin and the muffled rhythm of padded feet on soft trails. Strabo noted how these routes often followed the wadis, those ancient riverbeds now dry, but etched deep into the earth, their banks lined with sparse acacia trees that offered fleeting shade. The nomads, with their weathered faces and quiet determination, navigated these corridors with an intuition honed by centuries. Their cloaks wrapped tightly against the chill that descended as the stars multiplied overhead. The mystery of these unrecorded routes lingered like a half-forgotten dream. Paths that existed only in oral tales passed around campfires under the vast dome of the heavens. Strabo himself admitted the limitations of his knowledge, for the Bedouins guarded their secrets with a subtle wit, sharing just enough to tantalize outsiders while keeping the true labyrinth hidden. Perhaps it was the way the sands reformed after a storm, erasing footprints and redrawing the landscape, or the unspoken agreements among tribes that rendered certain trails invisible to the uninitiated. In this soothing rhythm of travel, one could almost hear the desert's gentle hum, a low vibration that spoke of hidden knowledge, as if the ground itself whispered warnings to those who strayed too far. As dawn broke, the nomads pressed on, their cloaks now kissed by the first light, which cast long shadows across the undulating terrain. The trails wound through valleys where the air tasted of salt from evaporated lakes, and the ground beneath released a soft crunch underfoot, a symphony of granules shifting in harmony. Strabo recounted how these routes linked the fringes of the Hejaz to the edges of the Rub al-Khali, the empty quarter, a realm so vast that it swallowed sound and time alike. Here, the nomads moved with a lullaby-like pace, their steps deliberate and unhurried, as if the journey were not a means to an end, but a meditation on the eternal. Sensory whispers accompanied their passage. The cool brush of night air against exposed skin, the distant call of a nightjar echoing through the stillness, and the subtle play of moonlight on the sands, turning them to silver threads. One could feel the weight of history in each grain. For Strabo described how these paths had been trodden since time immemorial, evolving with the seasons and the migrations of wildlife. The nomads, in their cloaks of muted earth tones, became one with this world, their presence a faint ripple in the fabric of the desert. Yet amid this calm, there were moments of quiet peril, where the routes veered into uncertain territories. Strabo alluded to such instances with a detached observation, noting how sudden sandstorms could alter a path's course, leaving travelers to rely on memory and instinct. In these times, the nomads would halt, their cloaks drawn close, listening to the wind's mournful song as it sculpted new obstacles. The consequences unfolded like a slow dawn, with groups dispersing or regrouping under the stars, their resilience a testament to an unwritten code. No graphic tales marred the serenity. Instead, the focus remained on the aftermath, the way the sands settled once more, revealing fresh possibilities. As the days blended into nights, the routes revealed their poetic essence, winding through landscapes where the air carried the faint aroma of wild herbs crushed underfoot. Strabo's writings painted a picture of endurance, of nomads who read the stars not as points of light, but as guides in a celestial dance. The mystery deepened with each mile, for these paths were never fully mapped, their secrets preserved in the oral traditions that flowed like the rare streams hidden in the folds of the dunes. One might ponder in the quiet hours how a route could vanish from knowledge, only to resurface in a storyteller's verse, a subtle wit in the face of oblivion. The nomads' cloaks, weathered and wise, told stories of their own, their folds catching the dust of ages and the dew of fleeting oases. In the soft glow of twilight, when the sky transitioned from deep indigo to pale morning, the travelers paused to rest, their forms outlined against the horizon like ancient carvings. Strabo noted the harmony between man and environment, how the routes adapted to the rhythms of nature, avoiding the harsh midday sun by favoring nocturnal journeys. Under the starry vault, the air grew fragrant with the night blooming flowers that dared to flourish in cracks of rock. their petals unfurling like silent secrets. This dance of light and shadow continued, the routes ebbing and flowing like the tides of an invisible sea. The mystery of the unrecorded paths added a layer of enchantment, for Strabo himself confessed that some trails were known only to the wind and the wanderers who communed with it. Perhaps it was the way the sands preserved echoes of past caravans, or the subtle shifts that kept maps obsolete, inviting a gentle curiosity rather than fear. In this soothing narrative, one could almost drift into repose, lulled by the imagined sway of cloaked figures against the backdrop of an endless sky. As the nomads forged ahead, their journeys wove through terrains where the ground released a warm sigh under the sun's retreat, and the air hummed with the buzz of unseen insects. Strabo's accounts provided anchors of truth, grounding the tale in the reality of ancient explorations, yet leaving room for the unknown. The routes, in their unassuming glory, became symbols of resilience, their mysteries a balm for the weary mind. In the quiet interludes, when the nomads gathered around low flames that flickered like distant stars, they shared fragments of lore, their voices a soft murmur against the night's embrace. The cloaks, now dusted with the essence of the trail, seemed to hold memories of every path traversed, every secret guarded. Strabo would have appreciated this subtlety, the way knowledge was parceled out like rare treasures, maintaining the allure of the unseen. As the sands whispered their final lullaby for the night, the routes extended into the horizon, promising more tales yet to unfold. And so, with the stars as eternal witnesses, we turn our gaze toward what lies beyond, where new mysteries await. In the heart of the desert, in the hushed expanse of 3rd century CE Arabia, where the sands whispered secrets to the wind, the Bedouin traders gathered under a canopy of stars that seemed to pause in their eternal dance. It was the season of festivals, a time when the nomadic tribes paused their endless migrations to celebrate the rhythms of life amid the ancient oases. These gatherings unfolded like threads in a forgotten tapestry, woven from the raw materials of the desert. Cool breezes carrying the scent of date palms and the soft glow of lanterns that flickered like distant memories. Here, far from the clamor of trade routes and the sanctity of unseen rituals, the people came together in cloaks adorned with vibrant dyes, their movements a gentle symphony against the night. The oases, those life-giving pools nestled in the heart of the arid lands, served as the perfect stage for these festivities. Imagine the nomads arriving at dusk, their camels laden with bundles of aromatic herbs and woven mats, the air thickening with anticipation. Men and women, clad in festive cloaks of deep crimson and earthy ochre, patterned with geometric designs inspired by the rocks of Petra, would circle the water's edge. These garments, passed down through generations, caught the fading light in a way that made the fabric seem alive, shimmering like the mirages that played tricks on the horizon. As the sun dipped below the dunes, the first drums began their soft cadence, a low thrum that echoed through the valleys, not with the sharp insistence of war drums, but with a lullaby's gentle pulse, inviting the body to sway rather than strike. The dancers moved with a grace born of the desert's vast solitude, their feet tracing patterns in the cool sand that had been trodden for centuries. A young woman, her cloak flowing like a river of silk threads, led the circle, her arms extended as if embracing the night sky. The drum echoes grew, not overwhelming, but persistent, a heartbeat that synced with the group's own, drawing in the elders who sat nearby, their faces etched with lines of stories untold. Lanterns, suspended from low-hanging branches of acacia trees, cast a warm, golden glow that danced across the scene, illuminating the subtle smiles and the glint of silver jewelry worn only for such occasions. The air was alive with scents, the sweet smoke of frankincense burning in simple clay pots, mingled with the earthy aroma of freshly baked flatbreads shared among friends. One could almost taste the night, a blend of dates soaked in honey and the faint bitterness of mint tea, passed around in communal cups that fostered bonds stronger than the sands that shifted beneath them. These festivals were not mere distractions from the nomadic life. They were the soul's reprieve, a way to honor the fleeting beauty of existence without delving into the structured routines of daily barter or the veiled sanctity of other traditions. Drawing from inscriptions found etched into the rose-red cliffs of Petra, where ancient Nabateans once carved their histories, we glimpse hints of these gatherings. The stones speak of communal feasts and dances, not as formal decrees, but as fleeting annotations, like the people of the sands unite in joy under the moon's watch. Historians might ponder these marks, faded yet enduring, as evidence of a culture that celebrated resilience through shared stories and songs, rather than through commerce or faith. In one such inscription, a simple line reads of circles drawn in the dark, alluding to the dances that bound the tribes, their steps a silent language of unity. As the night deepened, the sensory tapestry grew richer. The drum's rhythm evolved into a soft cascade, like rain on distant dunes, accompanied by the strumming of lutes made from goat skin and desert wood, their strings vibrating with a wit as subtle as a nomad's wry smile. Why rush through life? One might quip in the glow of the lanterns, when the stars take their time to shine. The dancers, their cloaks swirling in hypnotic patterns, evoked the wind's playful whispers, their laughter a light ripple that carried across the oasis. Children, too young for the full vigor of the dance, sat at the periphery, their small hands mimicking the movements, eyes wide at the way the lantern light transformed ordinary faces into ethereal visions. The air carried the faint tang of roasted meats turning on open fires, the fat sizzling and popping in a comforting cadence, while the cool night breeze offered a gentle caress, reminding all present of the desert's dual nature, harsh by day tender by night. Yet, amid this celebration, there lingered a mystery, as unrecorded as the wind's path across the sands. Whispers among the elders spoke of rites performed in the festival's quieter moments, traditions not etched into petra stones or shared beyond the innermost circles. These were not the solemn observances of faith or the pragmatic exchanges of trade, but something more elusive, perhaps, a shared incantation under the stars, a way to commune with the unseen forces that guided their migrations. One might catch a glimpse of it in the way the dancers paused, their eyes meeting in silent understanding, before resuming with a flourish that seemed to pull from an ancient well of knowledge. It was a mystery that added a layer of enchantment, a subtle enigma that made each festival feel like a dream half remembered, where the boundaries between reality and wonder blurred like the horizon at dawn. The gatherings often extended into the small hours, with stories unfolding like the petals of a night blooming flower. An elder, his voice a soothing murmur, might recount tales drawn from the fringes of history, such as the legendary caravan that once crossed these very oases, its leaders adorned in cloaks similar to those worn tonight. These narratives, infused with a gentle wit, poked fun at the follies of overzealous travelers or the quirks of camel behavior, drawing chuckles that echoed softly against the palms. The sensory details enriched every tale: the crackle of the fire, the warmth of shared blankets against the cooling air, the taste of cool water drawn from the oasis, flavored with a hint of wild herbs. Lanterns swayed gently, their glow casting shadows that danced like playful spirits, adding to the atmosphere of calm introspection. As the festival waned, the nomads would begin to disperse, their cloaks fluttering in the pre-dawn breeze, carrying with them the echoes of drums and laughter. Yet, even in parting, there was a sense of continuity, a thread that wove through the fabric of their lives. These moments by the oases were not just celebrations. They were affirmations of a world where joy could flourish in adversity, where the mystery of unrecorded rites kept the spirit alive. And as the first light crept over the dunes, one might feel a quiet transition, a gentle shift toward the next chapter, where the sands would once more call them onward. In the vast theater of Arabia, the Bedouin festivals stood as timeless interludes, their essence captured in the soft glow of lanterns and the persistent drum echoes that lingered long after the dancers had vanished into the morning mist. Drawing from the sparse yet evocative inscriptions of Petra, we see not a complete picture, but fragments that hint at a people who found harmony in the simple act of gathering. Perhaps in those unrecorded rites lay the true heart of their resilience, a mystery that invites contemplation, much like the stars that watched over all. As the sun rose, warming the sands with its golden touch, the nomads prepared to resume their journeys, leaving behind footprints that the wind would soon erase. Yet the memory of the festival remained, a lullaby in the soul's vast desert. under the vast, ink-black canopy of a 3rd century Arabian night, where stars twinkled like scattered jewels across an endless velvet. A group of Bedouin traders gathered around a modest campfire. The flames danced with a gentle rhythm, their orange glow casting long, flickering shadows on the weathered faces of men and women wrapped in coarse wool cloaks, dyed in earthy tones of sand and dusk. These nomads, ever wandering the harsh expanses of the desert, paused in their journeys to share the ancient art of storytelling, a tradition as timeless as the winds that sculpted the dunes. The air was cool and crisp, carrying the faint scent of smoldering acacia wood and the distant aroma of brewing mint tea in clay pots. Crackling logs released soft pops and whispers, like the earth itself murmuring secrets, while the occasional howl of a desert fox echoed from the distant sands. Seated on worn camel hair rugs, the storytellers leaned in, their voices rising and falling like the gentle undulations of the terrain they traversed. One elder, his cloak frayed at the edges from years of travel, began with a tale of clever traders outwitting sandstorms, his words flowing smooth as silk threads woven under the moonlight. In those days, the Bedouin lived as masters of adaptation, their lives a delicate balance between the relentless sun and the forgiving night. They roamed in small caravans, trading spices, frankincense, and tales across the vast Arabian peninsula, from the rocky outcrops of the Hijaz to the sweeping plains of the Najd. Storytelling was not mere entertainment. It was a vital thread in the fabric of their survival, preserving knowledge of water sources, treacherous paths, and the wisdom of ancestors. As the fire's warmth seeped into their bones, the nomads recited epics of endurance, where heroes navigated mirages and outsmarted elusive foes, all while the starry skies overhead seemed to listen with unblinking eyes. The elder's voice, deep and resonant, painted vivid pictures with each phrase, drawing listeners into worlds where the desert's mysteries unfolded. In the heart of the Rub al-Khali, he might say, a trader once followed a phantom oasis, only to find it was the echo of an ancient spring long buried by shifting sands. Sensory details wove through his narrative, the gritty feel of sand between fingers, the metallic tang of heated rocks at midday, the soothing rustle of wind through date palms. These stories, passed down through generations, relied on the spoken word alone, for the Bedouin had no scrolls or inscriptions. Their lore lived in memory, shaped by the cadence of voices around the fire. Ethnographic accounts from later scholars, drawing from oral histories and observations of similar nomadic cultures, suggest that these traditions were remarkably consistent across tribes. A storyteller might pause, his eyes glinting with subtle wit, to remark on how a foolish camel driver once mistook a scorpion for a date pit, leading to a comical chase across the dunes. Such light-hearted asides added a touch of humor to the tales, reminding listeners that even in adversity, the human spirit could find levity. Yet, beneath the soothing flow of words, there lingered an undercurrent of the unknown. For not all stories survived the passage of time. As the night deepened, the mystery of lost oral tales began to weave its way into the gathering. Many epics, once recited with fervor, had vanished like whispers carried away by the wind, leaving only fragments in the collective memory. Perhaps a tale of a legendary guide who charted stars to find hidden oases had faded, its details eroded by the relentless march of years and the scattering of tribes. This enigma intrigued the Bedouin, who pondered how such stories could slip into oblivion, much like a caravan lost to a sudden sandstorm. The elder spoke of it with a detached calm, noting the consequences. Without these tales, future generations might wander blindly, forgetting the subtle signs of the desert that had sustained their forebears. The fire's embers glowed softly, casting a warm hue on the listeners' faces, their wool cloaks pulled tight against the cooling air. One woman, her voice like a gentle breeze, took her turn, describing a merchant's encounter with a mirage that revealed forgotten trade routes. She evoked the sensory world with precision, the dry, earthy taste of parched air, the faint chime of camel bells in the distance, the prickly sensation of thorny bushes brushing against skin. Her words flowed without haste, each sentence a lullaby that eased the mind, encouraging thoughts to drift like clouds across the moonlit sky. In the 3rd century, as Rome's influence waned and trade routes flourished, the Bedouin adapted their storytelling to the rhythms of their nomadic life. Historical examples, gleaned from ethnographic studies of Bedouin descendants, illustrate how these narratives served as maps and moral compasses. A tale might recount a trader who, through cunning and observation, bartered for rare myrrh in exchange for tales of distant lands. His success, a testament to the power of words over weapons. The stories often highlighted the interplay between humans and the environment, with subtle wit underscoring the folly of underestimating nature's whims. As the scorpion hides in the shade, a storyteller might quip, so does opportunity lurk in the unexpected turn of the path. Yet, the mystery persisted, a quiet shadow over the firelit circle. What tales had been lost to the sands? Perhaps accounts of ancient alliances forged in secret oases, or stories of traders who vanished into the emptiness, their wisdom dying with them. This loss was not mourned with overt grief, but observed with a detached reflection on the impermanence of all things. The Bedouin understood that just as the desert reclaimed footprints, so too did time claim stories, leaving behind only echoes for the wind to carry. As the narratives unfolded, the sensory details grew richer, immersing the listeners in a tapestry of experience. The crackle of the fire blended with the soft susurration of sand against tent flaps, while the scent of roasting dates mingled with the cool, metallic night air. One storyteller described the feel of a well-worn dagger hilt smooth from generations of handling, symbolizing the enduring link between past and present. Another evoked the sound of a distant thunderstorm, its rumble like the god's own storytelling, reminding all of the desert's dual nature, both nurturing and unforgiving. Through these sessions, the Bedouin forged bonds stronger than any physical barrier. Their tales, a shared heritage that transcended the isolation of their wanderings. Ethnographic insights reveal parallels in other nomadic societies where oral traditions preserved cultural identity amid constant movement. A historical example might involve a famed storyteller from the Gadafan tribe, known for his ability to recite routes that avoided Roman patrols. His words saving lives through clever evasion rather than confrontation. As the fire began to dim, the stories turned introspective, touching on the mystery once more. How many lost tales lay buried in the sands, waiting for a chance rediscovery? The elder mused that perhaps, in the quiet hours before dawn, a wayfarer might stumble upon an ancient campsite and hear the faint echoes of forgotten narratives, carried on the wind like elusive spirits. This notion added a layer of intrigue, a subtle reminder that the desert held secrets beyond human ken. The night wore on, the stars slowly fading as the first hints of dawn painted the horizon in soft pastels. The Bedouin, their cloaks now heavy with dew, prepared to resume their journeys, carrying the stories within them like hidden treasures. In this way, the tradition endured, a soothing balm against the hardships of life on the move. And as the campfire's last embers glowed, one might wonder what mysteries the next gathering would unravel, leading seamlessly into tales yet to be told. Word count: 1,500 in the vast expanse of 3rd century CE Arabia, where the sands whispered secrets under an endless sky. The Bedouin traders moved like shadows across the dunes, cloaked in flowing robes of wool and linen, their faces half hidden by scarves against the gentle bite of the wind. They gathered in quiet camps as the sun dipped low. These nomads, descendants of ancient lineages tracing back to the oases and trade routes of the Hejaz and Najd, forged bonds not through written words or grand declarations, but through the subtle rhythms of shared survival. In the flickering light of campfires, under a canopy of stars that seemed to pulse with ancient stories, they sat in circles, their voices a soft murmur blending with the desert's hush. The air carried the warm scent of cumin and dates, mingling with the earthy aroma of freshly dug sand. Where they pitched their tents, a woman with weathered hands tended to a flatbread sizzling on a hot stone, the oil popping softly like distant raindrops on parched ground. Her movements were deliberate, almost ritualistic, as she flipped the dough, releasing a fragrance that drew the group closer. Around her, men and women exchanged quiet nods, their eyes reflecting the fire's glow, speaking volumes without a word. These gatherings were not mere meals. They were threads woven into the fabric of their community, binding wanderers who roamed the harsh landscapes between Petra's ancient ruins and the fringes of the Red Sea trade paths. Historical accounts, drawn from scattered archaeological reports, like those from the Nabatean sites, reveal how such bonds sustained these people through seasons of scarcity. Excavations at places like Madain Sali have uncovered remnants of communal hearths and simple pottery, suggesting feasts that fostered unity amid the uncertainty of nomadic life. Yet it was the unwritten friendships that held the true mystery, a silent pact formed in the shadows of dunes, where trust grew from shared dangers and quiet generosities. One trader might offer a sip from his water skin to a stranger under the midday sun, his gesture as fleeting as the wind, yet etching an invisible line of loyalty that endured across caravans. As evening deepened, the camp came alive with subtle sounds. The soft rustle of cloaks brushing against the sand, the occasional crackle of burning camel dung fueling the fire, and laughter that floated like a gentle breeze, light and unforced. A young man, his face marked by the faint lines of sun and wind, recounted tales of distant oases where water bubbled from hidden springs, his words laced with a subtle wit that teased without offense. The sands shift, but a friend's shadow remains, he might say, his voice a soothing lull, drawing smiles that spoke of deeper connections. These moments, preserved in the oral traditions echoed in later Bedouin poetry, were the essence of their bonds, fleeting, yet profound, like the stars that appeared and vanished with the night. In one such camp, nestled between rolling hills of golden sand, the group shared a meal of roasted lamb and fresh herbs, the meat's savory juices mingling with the crispness of flatbread. The flavors danced on the tongue, a comforting blend of spice and simplicity, evoking memories of ancestral gatherings. An elder, her eyes wise with the weight of years, passed around a bowl of dates, their sweetness a balm against the day's toil. She spoke sparingly, her words like cool water in the heat, reminding them that true bonds were not forged in the clamor of markets, but in the quietude of these desert havens. Archaeological evidence, such as the rock carvings at Jubba, hints at similar scenes from centuries past, where symbols of shared meals and communal circles suggest a society built on mutual reliance, far removed from the structured routines of settled life. Yet amid this calm, there lingered the mystery of unwritten friendships, those ephemeral ties that archaeology could only glimpse. How did a nod across a campfire become a lifelong alliance, or a shared waterskin seal, a pact against the perils of the route? It was as if the desert itself conspired to keep these secrets, burying them in the sands that shifted with every storm. In the soft glow of the fire, one might catch a glance exchanged between two traders, a look heavy with unspoken history, hinting at adventures survived and promises kept without witness. This enigma, distinct from the grand narratives of trade or festival, added a layer of intrigue to their world, a subtle puzzle that unfolded in the spaces between words. The night air grew cooler, carrying the faint scent of night-blooming flowers from a nearby wadi, their petals unfurling in the darkness like forgotten whispers. The group settled deeper into their circles, their cloaks drawn close for warmth. As stories wove through the air, one tale spoke of a trader who, guided by an unseen bond, navigated a sandstorm to aid a fellow wanderer. His path illuminated by the stars alone. Such accounts, while not recorded in scrolls, were etched into the collective memory, passed down as parables of trust. The sensory tapestry of these evenings, the warmth of bodies huddled together, the earthy taste of steeped tea, the rhythmic hum of a distant camel's groan, created a lullaby of connection, soothing the soul against the desert's vast indifference. As the fire dimmed to embers, the nomads lay back on their mats, gazing at the Milky Way arching overhead like a river of light. In these moments, the bonds felt eternal, a quiet defiance against the transience of their lives. Historical examples from sites like Al-Ula, with its ancient tombs and inscriptions, underscore how such communities thrived on these intangible links. Their resilience, a testament to human ingenuity in isolation. Yet the mystery persisted. How could friendships, born of sand and starlight, outlast the empires that rose and fell around them? It was a riddle wrapped in the wind's sigh, inviting reflection rather than resolution. In the morning, as the first light painted the dunes in soft pinks and golds, the camp stirred gently. The traders exchanged final words, their farewells as light as the dawn breeze, carrying the promise of future meetings. These parting rituals, simple and profound, reinforced the web of connections that spanned the desert. With the sun climbing higher, they dispersed like grains of sand, each carrying a piece of the group's spirit into the vast unknown. And as the horizon beckoned, one couldn't help but wonder what unseen threads might draw them together again. In another camp, under another sky, the bonds of the Bedouin traders, woven in the quiet heart of the desert, whispered of a world where community was not commanded, but discovered, a gentle mystery enduring through time. As the sands settled, thoughts turned toward the broader tapestry of their journeys, hinting at paths yet to unfold. In the hushed expanse of 3rd century Arabia, where golden dunes stretched like whispered secrets under a vast, star-strewn sky, the Bedouin traders moved as shadows against the sands. Their figures, cloaked in layers of woolen robes, seemed to blend with the gentle undulations of the desert, a rhythm born of ancient wanderings. No wind howled fiercely here. Instead, it sighed softly, carrying the faint rustle of fabric that spoke of journeys etched in time. These nomads, with their unhurried steps, carried the essence of a world untouched. Their leather satchels slung across shoulders, weathered by sun and silence. Each garment, each piece of gear, was a testament to survival's quiet art, woven from threads of necessity and tradition that danced lightly on the breeze. The woolen robes, heavy yet yielding, draped over their forms like the protective embrace of an unseen guardian spun from the fleeces of hardy sheep that roamed the fringes of oases. These garments offered a barrier against the day's searing heat and the night's creeping chill. The fabric, coarse and resilient, brushed against skin with a subtle whisper, a sound like distant leaves stirring in a hidden grove. In the soft glow of dawn, the robes took on hues of faded earth, mellow ochres, and muted browns that mimicked the dunes themselves, rendering the wearers nearly invisible amid the landscape's vast repose. A wide sash, knotted at the waist, held the robes in place, its ends fluttering like forgotten flags in the mildest zephyrs. These sashes, often dyed with pigments from crushed desert minerals, carried faint scents of salt and stone, evoking the memory of ancient trade routes that crisscrossed the sands. Upon their heads, the Bedouin donned keffiyehs, lightweight scarves of woven wool and cotton, folded into turbans that shielded faces from the relentless sun. The fabric's edges, frayed from years of wear, trailed gently in the air, brushing cheeks with a feathery touch that soothed rather than irritated. Beneath these, a simple cord of leather or twisted fibers secured the wrap, its texture smooth yet firm, a quiet anchor in the flow of movement. These head coverings were not mere accessories. They were archives of the wind's tales, carrying whispers of distant storms and the subtle grit of sand that settled into every fold. In the quiet hours before twilight, when the sky deepened to indigo, the keffiyehs would catch the fading light, their patterns a mosaic of geometric lines drawn from ancestral designs, gleaming like faint stars against the darkening horizon. Strapped across their backs or dangling from belts were the leather satchels, crafted from the hides of goats that had traversed the same unforgiving terrain. These pouches, tanned to a supple resilience, emitted a soft, earthy aroma, a blend of aged oils and the desert's dry perfume. As they swayed with each measured step, the leather, darkened by exposure and oiled for flexibility, creaked ever so faintly, a lullaby of motion that harmonized with the sand's gentle shift. Inside, one might imagine tools of the trade, flints for sparking fires, small vials of spices bartered from far-off lands, or maps etched on scraps of hide. But the satchels held more than utilities. They were vessels of mystery, concealing designs and patterns lost to the ages. From excavations at Petra, those ancient Nabatean cliffs carved by wind and time, fragments of similar satchels have emerged, their stitches revealing techniques that elude modern understanding. Scholars speak of intricate knots and reinforcements, perhaps infused with resins from rare resins, that allowed these bags to endure journeys across vast, unyielding expanses. Yet, amid this practical elegance, a subtle enigma lingered, like a half-forgotten dream in the pre-dawn haze. The lost gear designs of the Bedouin, hinted at through the relics unearthed at Petra, spoke of innovations that vanished with the shifting sands. Perhaps it was the way certain clasps, fashioned from bone or hardened fibers, locked into place with a satisfying click, a sound as discreet as a closing eye that baffled later generations, or the hidden pockets sewn into robe linings designed to safeguard fragile amulets or seeds from distant oases. Their placements known only through faint impressions in archaeological digs. These mysteries, untouched by the routines of daily barter or the care of beasts, wove a thread of wonder into the fabric of their existence. One might ponder, in the calm of a moonlit vigil, how such designs faded from knowledge, swallowed by the desert's vast forgetfulness, leaving only echoes in the wind as the nomads traversed the dunes. Their footwear simple sandals of leather soles, bound with thongs, kissed the ground with minimal disturbance. The leather, cured in the sun's warmth and softened by repeated wear, molded to each foot like a second skin, its surface etched with the patterns of countless steps. A faint squeak accompanied each placement, a sound so unobtrusive it blended with the sand's sigh, evoking the gentle patter of rain on distant stones. These sandals, reinforced at the heels with layers of hide scraps from Petra's findings, allowed for silent progress over shifting terrain, where every grain of sand told its own story. The Bedouin's gear extended to belts laden with small pouches, each holding necessities like a polished dagger sheath or a water skin of treated leather. Its cool, damp exterior a relief in the arid air. In the softer light of midday, when the sun hung like a benevolent watcher, the interplay of fabric and gear created a symphony of sensations. The wool robes, though heavy, allowed air to circulate, their weave capturing the subtlest breezes that carried hints of sage and warmed earth. A nomad might pause, adjusting a satchel strap, feeling the leather's warmth against his palm, a tactile reminder of the day's gentle rhythm. These elements, drawn from historical accounts of Petra's artifacts, revealed a people attuned to their environment, where every stitch and seam was a response to the land's whispers. No graphic tales of hardship intruded here. Instead, the consequences of their designs' durability, born of necessity, unfolded in a detached narrative, like shadows lengthening across the sands. As evening approached, the Bedouin would settle in the lee of a dune, their gear arranged with care. The robes, unfolded and spread as mats, offered a familiar texture under weary bodies, their fibers releasing a faint, comforting scent of wool and traveled miles. Here, in this tranquil interlude, the mystery of lost designs deepened, a subtle wit in the universe's design, how something so essential could slip away, leaving only fragments for posterity. Perhaps, in the quiet unfolding of night, these nomads pondered the same, their thoughts as light as the rustling fabric around them. And so, as the stars wheeled overhead in their eternal dance, the scene faded into the broader tapestry of Arabia's lore, beckoning toward tales yet untold, where other mysteries await in the shadows of history. In the fading light of a 3rd century CE afternoon, the ancient markets of Petra hummed with a quiet rhythm, like the gentle breath of the desert sands, settling after a storm. Wandering figures clad in flowing cloaks moved through the stone-carved avenues, their steps soft on the sun-warmed flagstones. These were the Bedouin traders, nomads of the arid expanses, their faces etched with the lines of endless journeys under the vast Arabian sky. Among them glided foreign merchants from distant lands, their tunics dusted with the fine grit of far-off roads, drawn by whispers of commerce that echoed through the windswept canyons. Here, in this cradle of rock and shadow, interactions unfolded not with the clamor of haste, but in a measured dance of words and gestures, as if the world itself paused to listen. The air carried a soothing blend of scents, the warm aroma of cumin and coriander drifting from clay pots tended by unseen hands, mingling with the earthy tang of camel hides stretched across merchant stalls. It was a fragrance that wrapped around the senses like a familiar blanket, easing the mind into a state of tranquil observation. The Bedouin, with their cloaks of woven wool dyed in earthy hues of ochre and deep indigo, bartered not out of desperation, but with the steady patience of those who knew the desert's secrets. A trader from the northern tribes might lean in close to a merchant from Roman Syria, his voice a low murmur like the rustle of palm fronds in a gentle breeze, discussing the exchange of simple provisions, perhaps a pouch of dried dates for a bolt of linen, though the specifics of such deals remained veiled, as if the sands themselves conspired to keep them hidden. Pliny the Elder, in his meticulous accounts from across the Roman world, spoke of these encounters with a detached curiosity, noting how the Bedouins' nomadic life fostered a web of informal alliances that defied the rigid structures of empire. He described them as shrewd observers of the land, their interactions with outsiders marked by a subtle wit, a clever turn of phrase that could turn a hard bargain into a shared laugh under the stars. In one passage, he remarked on the Bedouins' ability to navigate the uncertainties of trade, their dealings often concluding with a nod and a handshake that sealed agreements unwritten and unrecorded, lost to the winds of time. These unrecorded deals formed a quiet mystery, a shadow play in the marketplace where promises were made in the flicker of torchlight and then dissolved into the night, leaving historians to ponder what treasures of knowledge or wealth slipped through the fingers of memory. As the sun dipped lower, casting a golden veil over the sandstone facades, the crowds thinned to a peaceful murmur. A Bedouin elder, his cloak billowing slightly in the cooling air, approached a merchant from the eastern provinces, his eyes crinkling with a hint of amusement. The merchant, with skin weathered by Mediterranean seas, unfolded a small parcel, revealing not the glint of gold or the allure of rare spices. Those details belonged to other tales, but rather tokens of everyday utility, items that spoke of survival in a harsh world. The elder responded with a measured counter, his words flowing like a lullaby, weaving in a subtle jest about the merchant's accent, drawing a soft chuckle that eased the tension of negotiation around them. The market pulsed with sensory whispers, the faint clink of bronze weights on scales, the warm press of bodies moving in harmonious flow, and the occasional whiff of mint tea brewing in brass kettles, its steam rising like a sigh of contentment. In these moments, the interactions revealed a deeper rhythm, one that Pliny captured in his writings as a balance between the wild freedom of the nomads and the structured world of the merchants. The Bedouin, ever attuned to the desert's whispers, brought with them stories of oases and hidden wadis, tales that flavored their barters with an intangible value. A young trader, his cloak adorned with faded embroidery from his mother's hand, engaged a foreign counterpart in a discussion that stretched long into the evening. They spoke of the stars that guided their paths, their voices low and rhythmic, as if reciting an ancient poem. The mystery deepened here, in the unrecorded pacts that formed in such exchanges, agreements sealed with a glance or a shared silence, never inscribed on parchment, yet binding as the dunes that shifted with the wind. Pliny alluded to such enigmas, noting how these interactions often left no trace, allowing secrets to flourish in the gaps of history. A subtle wit in the universe's design that kept the full story just out of reach. The marketplace itself was a tapestry of calm activity, where the rustle of fabrics and the soft pad of sandaled feet created a symphony that lulled the senses. Lanterns began to glow as dusk settled, their warm light casting elongated shadows that danced like ghosts of past deals. A group of Bedouins sat in a loose circle, their cloaks pooling around them like pools of ink, sharing quiet words with a merchant who had traveled from the fringes of the empire. He described the olive groves of his homeland, his tone laced with a gentle humor about the Bedouin's preference for the open sands over settled life. In return, the nomads offered fragments of their lore, speaking of water sources known only to their kin, their voices carrying a soothing cadence that made the air feel heavier, more dreamlike. Sensory details emerged in these exchanges. The cool touch of a stone bench under weary limbs, the faint bitterness of mastic gum chewed to ward off fatigue, and the distant call of a night bird echoing through the cliffs. A sound that blended seamlessly with the murmur of ongoing talks. Yet even in this serene setting, hints of the world's harsher edges surfaced, though described with a detached grace. Pliny, in his accounts, touched upon the consequences of failed bargains disputes that faded into the desert without fanfare, leaving only the echo of what might have been. These were not tales of conflict, but of resolutions swallowed by time, where a nod of acceptance turned potential discord into a mere footnote. Its impact felt only in the subtle shift of alliances. The Bedouin, with their innate resilience, navigated these moments as they did the sands, emerging unchanged, their interactions a testament to endurance wrapped in wit and wisdom. As the night deepened, the merchants and nomads parted ways, their paths diverging like streams in the wadi. The foreign trader might retire to a tent lit by flickering oil lamps, the aroma of smoldering myrtle leaves filling the air with a woody sweetness that invited rest. The Bedouin, in turn, melted back into the shadows, their cloaks blending with the night, carrying with them the intangible fruits of their exchanges. Pliny's writings preserved the essence of these encounters, emphasizing the Bedouins' role as bridges between worlds. Their barters, a quiet art form that thrived in obscurity. The mystery of those unrecorded deals lingered, a gentle puzzle for the ages, where each interaction added a layer to the unseen tapestry of history, reminding all that not every story needed to be told to leave its mark. In the quiet aftermath, as the stars wheeled overhead in their eternal procession, one could imagine the next dawn bringing fresh faces to Petra's markets. The Bedouin and merchants would return, their dances of dialogue resuming with the same calming rhythm, a cycle as enduring as the rocks themselves. And though the details of their dealings remained shrouded, the air would once again carry the soothing scents and sounds that wove a lullaby for the soul, transitioning seamlessly to tales yet untold in the hushed expanse of 4th century Arabia, where the sands whispered secrets to the wind. The once vibrant threads of Nabatean trade began to fray and fade. Picture, if you will, the ancient caravan paths that had long carried the weight of spices, silks, and incense from distant lands, now lying still under a blanket of quiet dust. Traders, their cloaks worn thin like the pages of forgotten scrolls, moved with a weary grace through the fading light, their steps echoing softly against the sun-baked stones of forgotten waystations. The air carried a faint, lingering scent of myrrh, now mingled with the dry, earthy aroma of undisturbed sands, as if the desert itself sighed in resignation. These waystations, once bustling hubs of barter and rest, stood as silent sentinels along the routes that snaked through the vast, undulating dunes. Their walls, etched with faint carvings of camels and merchants from bygone eras, crumbled gently under the persistent caress of the wind, shedding flakes of ancient plaster like whispers of a vanishing world. The traders, faces lined with the quiet endurance of those who had traversed these paths for generations, paused at these crumbling outposts, not for commerce, but for a moment's reflection. Their cloaks, frayed at the edges and faded to a soft, muted brown, draped heavily over shoulders bowed by unseen burdens, as if the fabric itself held memories of prosperous journeys now abandoned. As the sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers across the sands, the traders gazed upon the empty trails with a detached calm. The routes that had connected the Nabatean heartlands to the bustling ports of the Mediterranean and the spice-laden shores of India grew quieter, vitality ebbing like the tide retreating from a distant shore. Archaeological remnants, unearthed in later centuries from sites like Hegra and Memphis, speak of this gradual unraveling fragments of pottery scattered like forgotten dreams, and the faint outlines of wells that once quenched the thirst of endless caravans. These artifacts, preserved in the dry embrace of the desert, reveal a network once thriving on the exchange of frankincense and myrrh, but now yielding to an inexorable decline. The mystery of this unrecorded fade lingers like a half-forgotten melody in the air, its causes shrouded in the same sands that bury secrets deep. Scholars, drawing from sparse reports of Roman expeditions and climate shifts, ponder possibilities without certainty. Perhaps the rise of alternative trade routes through the Red Sea, or the subtle encroachment of arid winds that parched the land and withered the oases. Yet no definitive chronicle survives to illuminate the why, leaving only the gentle rustle of palm fronds in the breeze to hint at what might have been. In this detached narrative, one senses a subtle wit in the desert's indifference, as if the sands themselves chuckle softly at the transience of human endeavors, their grains shifting to erase the paths once trod with such purpose. Imagine, then, a trader pausing at dusk, his cloak brushing against the cool stone of a way station wall, the texture rough and uneven under his calloused fingers. The evening air grows cooler, carrying the faint, soothing hum of nocturnal insects emerging from their hidden crevices, a lullaby to the fading day. Far in the distance, the outline of a lone camel silhouette sways gently against the twilight sky, its soft footfalls muffled by the soft, yielding sand. These animals, once the lifeblood of the trade, now wandered with a languid pace, their bells silent, as if attuned to the quiet resignation of their handlers. The traders, with eyes that held the wisdom of countless sunrises and sunsets, spoke in low, measured tones of routes that no longer beckoned, their voices blending with the whisper of the wind, like a serene, sleep-inducing chant. As the nights lengthened in the 4th century, the stars above seemed to shine with a brighter clarity, unmarred by the fires of crowded campsites. The celestial canopy, a vast tapestry of twinkling lights, offered a comforting spectacle to those who lingered on the fringes of the trade networks. Yet beneath this serene veil, the consequences unfolded with a gentle inevitability. The flow of goods slowed to a trickle. Spices that once filled the air with exotic fragrances now lay untouched in hidden storerooms, their scents fading into the ambient dryness. Archaeological digs at sites like Dumatha have uncovered caches of such goods, sealed away as if in anticipation of revival, only to be reclaimed by time. These findings paint a picture of a society adapting, not in dramatic upheaval, but in a slow, almost poetic withdrawal, where the absence of bustle allowed the natural world to reclaim its dominance. In this calming rhythm of decline, one might envision the traders gathering around a modest fire, its flames flickering with a subdued warmth that cast dancing shadows on the surrounding rocks. The fire's glow, soft and inviting, illuminated faces etched with subtle lines of contemplation, their expressions devoid of despair, only a quiet acceptance. The crackle of burning twigs provided a soothing counterpoint to the vast silence, each spark rising like a fleeting thought into the cool night air. Here, in these moments, the mystery deepened. Why had the networks, so resilient against earlier challenges like Persian incursions or shifting alliances, succumbed now? Reports from Roman historians, though fragmentary, suggest economic pressures from imperial taxes or the allure of safer, sea-based trade. But these remain mere speculations, adding to the enigma's allure. The sands, ever the patient observers, held their own sensory tales. Underfoot, they shifted with a silky smoothness, cool to the touch in the evening hours, warming the soles of worn sandals that had traversed thousands of miles. The wind, a constant companion, carried whispers of distant storms, its gentle gusts brushing against skin like a mother's hand, lulling the weary into a state of peaceful reflection. Traders, in their abandonment of familiar paths, found solace in the simplicity of the unchanged desert, where the scent of wild herbs mingled with the faint, earthy tang of dew-kissed sands at dawn. This sensory tapestry wove a narrative of transition, not loss, a lullaby-like reminder that all things, even mighty trade empires, ebb and flow like the desert's own rhythms. As the months turned to years, the way stations grew more isolated, their structures yielding slowly to the elements. Vines crept over doorways, their leaves rustling softly in the breeze, while birds nested in the crevices, their songs a melodic backdrop to the quietude. The traders, ever adaptable, turned their gazes inward, perhaps to smaller local exchanges that required less perilous journeys. Yet the overarching mystery persisted, a subtle undercurrent in the narrative of decline, distinct from the grand falls of other eras. Archaeological evidence from sites like Al-Ula offers glimpses of this shift. Coins and inscriptions that speak of a fading prominence, without the dramatic tales of conquest or catastrophe. In the end, as the first light of morning painted the sands in hues of soft gold and rose, the traders moved on, their worn cloaks fluttering like flags of quiet surrender. The paths they left behind merged seamlessly into the landscape, becoming one with the eternal desert. This gentle unraveling, wrapped in the soothing embrace of sensory details, the cool kiss of the night air, the rhythmic sigh of the wind, the faint echo of distant dunes, serves as a bridge to what follows, where the echoes of forgotten networks linger, inviting contemplation of the next chapter in the vast tapestry of time. In the hushed expanse of Jordan's ancient red rock canyons, where the sun dips low and paints the stone in hues of amber and rose, a gentle breeze stirs the fine grains of sand that have guarded secrets for centuries. Here, in the shadow of Petra's towering facades, a team of archaeologists moves with the quiet rhythm of a lullaby. Their tools whispering against the earth, they seek not the clamor of discovery, but the subtle echoes of Bedouin traders whose legacies linger like a faint, comforting melody in the wind. The air carries a soft, earthy scent, a blend of sun-warmed rock and the faint spice of bygone caravans, cinnamon and myrrh, perhaps, from tales preserved in museum archives. These traders, nomadic weavers of commerce and culture, left imprints that endure in the modern heartlands of Jordan and Saudi Arabia. Their influence weaves through the fabric of daily life, from the intricate patterns of contemporary Bedouin textiles to the resilient trade practices that sustain desert communities. UNESCO reports from the early 2000s highlight how these nomadic groups fostered early networks of exchange, not just of goods, but of ideas, shaping the social tapestry that persists today. As the archaeologists kneel in the soft glow of dawn, their brushes trace the contours of a buried relic, a dusty pottery vessel, its surface etched with faded geometric designs that speak of skillful hands long stilled. The clay feels cool and grainy under their fingers, a tactile whisper of the past, while particles of sand dance in the light, glinting like stars against the vessel's muted terracotta. This piece, catalogued in records from the Jordan Museum, might have once held dates or aromatic resins carried across vast sands by traders who navigated by the stars. In Saudi Arabia's remote oases, similar artifacts have been unearthed, their forms echoing in modern crafts sold in bustling souks, where the scent of brewing coffee mingles with the memory of ancient barters. The legacy unfolds like a serene story, one that UNESCO heritage assessments describe as a bridge between eras. These traders, often Bedouin families who traversed the arid landscapes, contributed to a cultural resilience that modern societies draw upon. In Jordan, their descendants maintain traditions of hospitality, offering sweet tea in etched glasses that mirror the designs on rediscovered bronze trinkets. A small bronze amulet, its edges smoothed by time, and now glinting faintly in the archaeologist's lamp, evokes the protective talismans once worn by these wanderers. Museum records from Riyadh detail how such items symbolized not just personal safeguard, but communal bonds, influencing today's social customs, where gatherings under the stars foster unity amid the dunes. Yet, amid this peaceful uncovering, a subtle mystery beckons, like a half-forgotten dream. Whispers of forgotten trader tales emerge from the artifacts themselves, inscriptions on a weathered bronze plate, perhaps, that hint at stories never fully told. The plate, discovered nestled among shards of pottery, bears symbols that archaeologists pore over with gentle curiosity. According to UNESCO documentation of Petra's site, such markings could be fragments of an oral tradition, tales of traders who bartered not only goods, but enigmatic wisdom lost to time. What secrets might these symbols hold? A witty observer might note that the plate's faint engravings, with their playful loops and curves, resemble a cryptic script designed to tease rather than reveal, as if the traders themselves left a puzzle for future generations to ponder in quiet amusement. The archaeologists work on, their movements deliberate and unhurried, the soft scrape of tools against stone creating a rhythm as soothing as a desert night. Sensory details abound. The warm, dry touch of sand slipping through fingers, the faint metallic tang in the air from exposed bronze, and the distant call of a lone bird echoing through the canyons. In Saudi Arabia, similar excavations at sites like Al-Ula, as recorded in museum logs, have revealed comparable relics, intricate bronze beads that clink softly when handled, their surfaces polished to a subtle sheen that catches the light like distant stars. These beads, once strung on traders' garments, now inspire modern jewelry artisans, their designs a nod to the enduring aesthetic legacy. Imagine the traders of old, their camels plodding through the sands under a vast, velvet sky, their paths marked by the artifacts now gently exhumed. UNESCO reports emphasize how these nomads adapted to harsh environments, their innovations in water conservation and textile weaving, influencing sustainable practices in contemporary Jordan and Saudi Arabia. A dusty fragment of woven fabric, its threads still holding a whisper of color, might have been part of a trader's tent, now evoking the cozy gatherings where stories were shared. The fabric's texture, rough yet comforting, invites the touch, a sensory bridge to the past where such materials provided shelter and warmth. As the day wanes, the archaeologists pause to examine a glinting bronze dagger hilt, its engravings telling of a legacy woven into the very soil. The metal cools in the evening air, its surface etched with patterns that museum experts link to Bedouin artistry, symbols of prosperity and protection. This hilt, perhaps once used in ceremonial trades, now rests in careful hands, its mystery deepening the narrative. What untold tales does it guard? A subtle wit emerges in the thought that these traders, with their clever barters, might have embedded riddles in their crafts, challenging us to unravel them with the same ingenuity they employed in modern times. This legacy manifests in the quiet strength of communities. In Jordan's cities, artisans craft pottery, inspired by ancient forms, their workshops filled with the scent of kiln-fired clay and the soft clatter of tools. Saudi records from cultural heritage sites illustrate how Bedouin influences shape festivals, where music and dance echo the rhythms of old trade gatherings. The mystery of forgotten tales adds a layer of intrigue, as if each artifact carries a whispered invitation to explore deeper. Beyond the visible legacy, the archaeologists, their work bathed in the golden light of sunset, Feel the weight of history in every grain of sand. A particularly evocative. Find a small, dusty bronze seal, its face imprinted with an unknown symbol, stirs the imagination. UNESCO assessments of such seals suggest they were used to mark goods. Yet this one's markings deviate slightly, hinting at a personal story. Perhaps a trader's secret code. The seal's cool, smooth surface against skin provides a moment of connection, a sensory detail that bridges eras as shadows lengthen across Petra's facades. The legacy of these Bedouin traders remains a calming presence, a lullaby of resilience and mystery. Their artifacts, with their dusty allure and glinting hints, remind us that some stories, though forgotten, never truly fade. And as we linger on these echoes, our thoughts gently turn toward the next chapter, where new horizons await in the tapestry of time. Word count 1502.